Malcolm Garvey Huey, study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Life is like a movie, study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey.
It's Gangsta Grills,
Life is like a movie. I die, I organize. Everything I do's revolutionize. I build what's good for the whole damn hood. Study G's like these, really think you should. I study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Marshall Cody with the Uzi. Listening to Fela Kuti. I'm Okun with the machete. Especially if it's Delhi. Got the Santos with a hexie to protect me. So respect me. This is heavy, legendary, revolutionary. My wifey, she resurrect me when they thought they had me buried. Took me out the cemetery. Now it's family over every. Cause it's all that's necessary to avoid the commissary. I'ma live for you five, so I stop getting high. If you know, then you recognize it's that black and brown pride. This the power of the mind. RBG, God divine. You can see through the lies if you could read between the lines.
I live, I die, I organize. Everything I do, revolutionize. I build what's good for the whole damn hood. Study G's like these, really think you should.
Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey.
Malcolm Garvey Huey, punchy Bobby, pocket dookie. Sitting by the door so you can say I'm acting spooky. Just like in the movie, son, you better pack your toolie. Niggas switch be acting fruity, you'll be cracking like they kooky. Rather smoke a doobie than be burning and eluding. Bang, bang, pig shooting, you should blame Rudy Julie. Yanny for the camera, shine a white and nose candy. Let you banging on the system, you a gangster wearing panties. RBG, my family from the Bronx to Miami. Police cannot stand me, packing y'all like a manny. Call me Little Bobby Hutton, cause I'm first to push the button. Rappers don't be saying nothing to the system, we say fuck them. This is for Nahana, Mama C, Mama Akua. All the real OGs, I'm a soldier, cause you told me study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey, I'm reporting in the duty. Sticky, icky, yours truly here for duty. Don Davino, M.A. Uno, you know how we drop the jury. This is real, not a movie. Not Mickey, Donald, Goofy. I'm a soldier, I avoid a bitch nigga like the cootie.
School face in a hoodie.
Fresh pair of khakis, we could do this like we fama. Go to war like the Apaches. For whatever, I stay ready. I learned that in Tallahassee. Babatunde used to school me as a juvie, skipping classes. Never let the system use me. My duty is my passage. Watch the homies in your army. They don't always show their badges. Keep your family living healthy. Teach your children about their blackness. Teach your wifey how to use the ratchet. This shit is classic. Get your food, clothes, and shelter. Fuck the system, pimp it backwards. I ain't hating. I'm just saying, if you wanna be a rapper, study
Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey.
A tactical approach is designed to get certain results. It's designed to keep you alive. It's designed to bring about victory.
Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Kari Lumumba, back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Back once again, make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. We're back to have a rather candid conversation about a rather sensitive topic, and that is, can you be pro-Black and date or marry, of course, interracially? So with that being said, I think we're going to have a great conversation about this topic. I do know that for many people, there is a belief that one can do so. And I think it's important that we kind of break down some of the core values, concepts, and beliefs of someone who, of course, is a Black nationalist or a Pan-Africanist, and where it lies on that concept and idea, of course, of interracial marriage, so on and so forth. But make sure you hit the subscribe and like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to address the elephant in the room, right? Oftentimes when people have this conversation about dating outside the race, the belief typically, or the conversation that's been had ad nauseum in the Black community, is that Black men date outside their race or marry outside their race at a number that is far larger than, of course, Black women as sisters. I've even heard conversations where people have stated that Black men date outside the race more than any other racial ethnic group or gender group in America. And that, of course, is not true. We know that the two largest racial gender groups in America that date outside the race, of course, are Asian women and white men. So it seems that irrespective of what the facts, data, statistics are, we find individuals who are of the belief that the Black men tend to always be the problem. So first and foremost, one thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at blackdemographics.com, and we're going to address the elephant in the room. So you go to blackdemographics.com. These are Black demographics for Black people, by Black people. And what we find here is the Black marriage rate in 2021. And blackdemographics.com, you can look them up if you want to kind of find out what they're about. It's just a reputable source of information. What we do know is that blackdemographics.com has been cited by the Washington Post, Pew Research Center, amongst others. They've been actually cited in left-leaning journals as well as right-leaning journals as well. So you could do your research if you want to question the credibility of blackdemographics.com. But with that being said, we would see that 85% of Black men who are married to a Black woman, and 93% of Black women who are married to a Black man. As we can see, only 8%, I repeat, only 8% of Black men who are married to a white woman. And as you can see here, only 4% of Black women are married to a white man. So what we find here is that the numbers are rather small. Right, the numbers are rather small. Yes, Black men are married to white people at twice the rate of Black women, but it's a rather small number, and so as a result, it's easy for that to be double the rate. So I just wanted to address that elephant in the room, because I do know that for many people, that is a belief, that is a talking point, that is seen as, brothers aren't loyal to, they're not down for the cause, loyal to the soil, whatever type of term that one would want to use, right? I think also is also important. We talk about this whole concept of being pro-Black or Black-minded, being a Black nationalist, being a Pan-Africanist. When we talk about being in a dating, meaning being in a relationship or even marrying outside of your race, is that something that is in line with the values, of course, Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism? And I think anyone, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because I've had brothers who are Pan-Africans who would argue in a state that they were Pan-Africans who would actually be married to members of another race. And I said, but that is actually in contravention of the values of Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. So many people would say, well, who are you to make that claim? So you have to go to the literature, right? So then we're going to open this up, and we're going to put the link in the chat, and then we're going to have, of course, a candid conversation. So we're going to go to the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey, also known as Africa for the Africans. And I want to pull this out. But Marcus Garvey, he kind of talks about this ad nauseum, right? But he talks about, in terms of miscegenation, some men of the Negro race aggravate the race question because they force the white man to conclude that to educate a Black man, to give him opportunities, is but to fit him to be a competitor for the hand of his woman. Hence the internal race question. But not all Black men are willing to commit race suicide and to abhor their race for the companionship of another. There are hundreds of millions of Black men who are proud of our skins, and to us, the African empire will not be a utopia, neither will it be dangerous nor fail to serve our best interests, because we realize that, like the leopard, we cannot change our spots, our skins. The men of the highest morals, highest character, and noblest pride are to be found among the masses of the Negro race, who love their women with as much devotion as a white man love theirs, right? So we find here, of course, Marcus Garvey, if you don't know, was the preeminent Pan-Africanist of the early 20th century, and he's seen by many to be the link between classical Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism, and of course, modern Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. And many people argue he was the greatest Pan-Africanist ever, due to the fact that he was able to accomplish the most of anyone, that great line of divine, that is, of course, the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion. However, when we tend to have this conversation, many people make the argument or argue or opine and believe that, well, if you're not willing to date outside your race, then you must hate other racial ethnic groups of people, which is completely false, nonsensical, if you ask me. One, I think people should understand that 85% of the world's population practice homogeneous marriage and of course procreation. I want to say that one more time. 85% of the world's population, you could fact check me here, of course, as someone who studied anthropology. I'm kind of leaning on my undergraduate education here, but 85% of the world's population practice homogeneous marriage and of course procreation. So this whole idea of dating outside of one's race tends to be something that isn't practiced on a large level, irrespective of the racial ethnic group that we're talking about. And so that's the kind of the conversation we're going to have. Definitely want to get some people's opinions on this. So I'm going to put the link in the chat, and then we're going to get the conversation started. The link is in the chat, and we're going to get the conversation started. Once again, we have a candid conversation about a extremely, oftentimes, many people would consider controversial conversation. And that is, can you be pro-Black? Can you be Black-minded? Can you be a Black nationalist? Can you be a Pan-Africanist? And of course, date or marry interracially. And when I say date or marry, I'm talking about being in a relationship with or marry. I'm not talking about someone who, you were in college, you were acting like you was at Baskin Robbins, right? So once again, the link is in the chat. And of course, we want to have a rather candid conversation about an issue in our community that many people tend to take umbrage with. We know, unfortunately, oftentimes when a brother does date outside their race, it's frowned upon. And we know oftentimes, unfortunately, that when a sister does, it's oftentimes praised, you go girl, you're winning, so on and so forth. So we can maybe even address that type of contradiction that we see in our community as well. So as I said before, the link is in the chat. I want to have a candid conversation about an extremely controversial topic, and that is, of course, interracial marriage. And even maybe a byproduct of that, of course, is, or a derivative of that, of course, being miscegenation, right? This idea of miscegenation. Do you see this as problematic for someone who is advocating for the salvation, liberation, and self-determination of the Black nation? Or is it a situation in which, irrespective of what one's ideological frame of reference is, you can't help who you love or who you fall in love with? Many people, of course, including myself, believe that who you love and who you marry is a reflection of your values. And so if someone values multiculturalism, that is quite all right. But I think somebody, in terms of the idea of Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, one should be honest about that and make sure that they are living a life that is, of course, in line with their values and beliefs. So once again, the link is in the chat. So make sure you tap in. Definitely want to have a candid conversation, and we see what comes from there. So definitely want to have a candid conversation. I said it before. The link is in the chat. The link is in the chat. The link is in the chat. Please tap in and be part of the conversation. So having a conversation about, can you be pro-Black and date and marry interracially? Also, as you know, you don't have to cam up to be part of the conversation. You could put in a pseudonym, right? So no one has to know who you actually are to come on, be part of the conversation. You don't have to cam up to be part of the conversation. You could use a pseudonym, then you could tap in, and then you could give your perspective on the topic. As we know, this is something that tends to be a very controversial topic in the Black community. And so definitely want to get people's perspective on what they think about it, right? We do know that from a Pan-Africanist perspective, irrespective of if the child is the product of a biracial union, we accept that person, as an African, because you can't control how you got here. And we know that for the most part, many of the fathers and mothers, of course, of Pan-Africanism were of mixed racial ancestry, right? So you can't control how you got here, but you can control what your mindset is and where your commitment lies. And I always give an example, one of T. Thomas Fortune, who I think by all accounts was an octoroon, but he was, of course, the editor of Marcus Garvey's Negro World newspaper, right? So I don't trip on that, but I think this is, of course, a candid conversation that we can and should have in the Black community. We know that oftentimes many people like to promote a lot of misinformation about this idea and concept, so on and so forth. So make sure you tap in. The link is in the chat. I'm gonna put the link in the chat one more time. Please be part of the conversation. Make sure you hit the like button. thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. We're having a rather controversial conversation about this idea of being pro-black, this idea of subscribing to the concepts and ideas of black nationalism or pan-Africanism, but of course, marrying or dating, being in a relationship with someone of another racial ethnic group. But Brother Khalid, go right ahead. What do you have to say on the topic, brother?
Hey, Bakari.
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear
you
you
hear
just
me?
fine. Yes, I can.
Because I can't. Hold on. I can't hear you.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me see. Why can't I hear you?
Like I said, the link is in the chat. Link is in the chat. Definitely want to get some diverse perspectives. Hope some sisters could hop on and be part of the conversation. I know I've heard in the past that some men look like you got in the background as well. So we need to cut that off. That we've had some what many people would consider to be male-dominated conversations. But hey, that's not playing. If you are a sister, can you be pro-black and date a non-black person? It depends. Bawana, hey, tap in, be part of the conversation. Definitely want to get your perspective on that. Like I said before, I don't mind. You could disagree with me as long as the day is long, as they say. Come in, be part of the conversation, and I would love to hear your perspective on why you feel that it depends. Once again, right here, but here at Lumumba Speaks, we argue what? Facts over feelings, right? Substantiate your position with, of course, substantiate your position with factual information. And then last but not least, but most importantly, do not use any type of racial epithets of any kind to describe white or black people, irrespective of where they are in the world. So a white person can be pro-black, i.e. work to ensure the betterment of black people. Hey, brother, you got to tap in and be part of the conversation, Bawana. You got to tap in and be part of the conversation. If you're gonna come like that, I'll come. Okay, give me a minute. So we got brother Malcolm, brother Nate. Definitely want to hear you all's perspective on this. As I said before, this tends to be a very controversial conversation in the black community. Many people find it as someone who was engaging in hypocritical behavior. Many people argue that it's antithetical to the core values of black nationalism and, of course, pan-Africanism to date, and particularly to marry outside of one's community. I tend to agree with that. I believe that one of the major issues that black people face globally is the maldistribution of resources, right? And so anytime we are able to of course, gain those resources, I always tell people that we need to try to keep those resources in-house rather than giving them to another racial ethnic group. With that being said, I read a quote from The Philosopher's Opinions of Marcus Garvey, where Marcus Garvey spoke on it. We know even Martin Delaney spoke on this as well as a number of other Pan-Africanists in that great line of divine that is, of course, the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion. And so definitely want to get you all's perspective on this as well. I know that in many spaces, particularly very liberal spaces, we tend to find individuals who would argue and advocate for this idea of being Black nationalists or Pan-Africanists, but be in a interracial relationship. So definitely want to get you all's perspectives on that. So with that being said, I'm going to shut up and give you all the floor.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can hear y'all. Before I get into it, let's elaborate what you think the definition of pro-black is. What is your definition of pro-black?
Well, I think pro-black is a very broad and all-encompassing term, right? So I prefer Black nationalism or Pan-Africanism, right? Because then we know that is an ideology and a worldview that comes with a particular set of principles.
Yeah, you're right.
So anyone can say, "Hey, I'm pro," right? You pro anything, but that could look very different to a multitude of people.
Right. Because I mean, when you think about it, it is kind of weird to have somebody that claims to be pro-black, but when it comes to their personal life, they decide to date outside their race with somebody that's not black. Mm-hmm. So it comes down to, like, if the person is doing good for their community, there might be people who would be against their personal life as far as dating or marrying outside their race, but if they're still contributing to doing good for the community versus black people who might be married to other black people that ain't doing nothing or could be a detriment to the black community, it I guess it would come down to still how you view the definition of pro-black, and if you
So
would still give them credit for what they do versus
we,
even
we
though
can
they
we,
still
we
marry
can
outside
scrape
their race.
we can scrape pro-black, right? So we'll use black national. Can you be a black nationalist or a pan-Africanist?
No, no, you cannot. No, you
Okay,
cannot.
because we know there have been a number of black people who were integrationalists, right? Who were married to members of another racial ethnic group, but did do a lot of work in the black community. So, can you be a black nationalist or a Pan Africanist and
Yeah.
marry outside of your race?
Yeah, due to the definition in terms of Pan Africans and Black nationalists, no, you cannot. No.
All right, and
Yeah,
can
being
you give? Go ahead.
being pro-black, like you said, is a very broad term. So those type of things would slide. Like I said, being pro-black doesn't have the same type of morals and principles as being a black nationalist and the Pan Africans.
Right.
So you know that's so yes. But on the terms of black nationalism and Pan Africanism, no, you cannot. Dating outside your race is prohibited from claiming those terms.
Okay. And so when we say dating outside your race, we're talking about pursuing actual relationships. Like I said, I'm not talking about a brother or sister who,
Right.
hey, I needed something strange, and I was, I'm not even gonna touch that topic. I'm gonna give people some grace there. You know what I mean? Because I got a homeboy. He's a black national
Right.
rapper. When he was in college, he was like, "Listen, ain't nothing here but them folks. I got to do what I got to do. I got some biological needs that need to be filled." He would tell me that all the time. So, with that said, Brother Nate, what is your perspective?
Hey, what's going on, Doc?
Hey, I'm doing all right.
Hey, what's going on, Brother Malcolm?
Hey, it's good to see you again, brother
Yeah.
Nate. What's up?
Same here, man. Same here. Well, my perspective is similar to you guys. I think only in limited situations, like if you were to marry someone of another ethnic group, and they also advocate for that liberation of Black people globally, and and also support their spouse that is pro-Black, Pan-African. I think in certain instances that may be okay, but I don't think that's the majority of the interracial relationships, though. So I guess to answer that question, it shouldn't be encouraged if you're going to be pro Pan-Africanism and Black liberation. So
let me ask you this, Brother Nate. So you don't see it as a contradiction, irrespective of the values or beliefs? Because we do know, so for example, when we talk about blackness, we know there are 3 C's to blackness, right? Color, culture, and consciousness. There may be some individuals who have tapped into the culture. There may be some individuals who have learned and studied and became prolific and in terms of the history, understand the history and struggle of course, Black people. So there may be some consciousness there, but they're still not Black, right? And so the question comes down to, irrespective of a person's political ideology or their care and concern for the Black community, is it hypocritical to be with a non-Black person when you are advocating Black empowerment?
Well,
Yes.
yes, but at the same time, what I mean is special occasions, meaning, and hear me out.
I
I'm not
got you. I'm not gonna cut you off. Trust me.
right, and what I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not the normal situation. Like if you in a situation where the interracial person you're dating, they also advocate for the liberation of Black people, and they assist in those endeavors. And they're with a person that's pro-Black, Pan-Africanism, and they understand those things, and they use their contributions to contribute to that. I think that would be, I mean, in that case, I think it'll be okay. But I still, even at the same time, that would be more secondary. The first and foremost thing, I think, if you're going to be pro-black Pan-Africanism, the first and foremost thing, you should look for a person within your culture group.
Right.
Correct.
That's just the only thing I'm saying, because I mean, like people like Frederick Douglass that contribute to great works of
Said the
black
same thing.
literature in this country.
Mhm.
I think that you know,
He,
and many others that were married to uh,
So,
interracial spouses.
let me say this though. Frederick Douglass wasn't a black nationalist, and he wasn't a Pan Africanist. Frederick Douglass,
I get it, but I guess I
he
was
was
looking at
integration.
the fact,
yeah, on
right,
terms of pro.
but I guess I was looking at the fact that he did contribute to the literature of African American struggle.
He
Yeah,
contributed to more than just literature. He did a lot.
he was
Right.
a integrationist, not a black nationalist. So he
I agree.
frame of this conversation.
Right.
But like I said, I would advocate for the original, for the two people to cohabitate or to marry within their own respective racial and ethnic group. That's my best
So we
answer.
still consider Frederick Douglass pro-black.
I'm sorry.
I said, will we still consider Frederick Douglass a pro-black, even though he was married to a white woman, for what he did for his people?
Well, I mean, he was an integrationist. So integrationists typically are individuals who have the political ideology and philosophy of they are American first and black second. Right.
But
So
what do you think? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
but
sorry. Go ahead.
from my
Oh,
perspective, for what he did for black people in general, and in his time, from being a black man that was born a slave, escaped slavery, and did everything he did, if you take that into account to what most so-called pro-blacks do today, you would still have to give him his credit, in
Yeah,
my
I mean,
opinion,
I'm not saying that he didn't
for
do
what he
great
did.
work. I'm just saying he didn't align in his life, his politics didn't align with the philosophy of black nationalism or Pan-Africanism. That's all I'm saying. Like his contemporary,
They,
Mark Delaney, did. That's all I'm saying.
no,
but
I agree.
but on the terms of pro,
I mean, a good example would be Booker T. Washington. Irrespective of how you feel about Booker T. Washington, he built a black institution. He promoted black economic independence. But Booker T. Washington wasn't a black nationalist. He was a black conservative. So, I mean,
Right.
there are people who do great things to benefit the black community, even though they don't subscribe to the ideology or core tenets of black nationalism or Pan-Africanism.
right? We're not speaking on terms of pro-black no more. We're just speaking on black nationalists and Pan-Africans.
Right.
Okay,
But
so yeah, they wouldn't be.
King of Kings, as you said exactly, I hope you could tap in as well. Bawana, if you're there, you could tap in.
Good night, good brothers. To the question, Doc. I believe that you can be pro black empowerment and not necessarily be a black person. You have people all around the world who contribute to countries and help countries to become economically stable and do many different things throughout the black world, the Caribbean, and even sometimes in Black America. So I think that you could be pro black empowerment and not necessarily be a black person. As far as a black nationalist and Gavi, they are qualifiers. They're qualifiers. So because you align yourself with those political ideologies, then you can't necessarily claim those ideologies and assign yourself with a person who is non-black. So there's a few things going on there. As far as Frederick Douglass, I think that there's some confusion going on because Frederick Douglass did do fantastic things in his lifetime, escaping slavery and being a productive individual. But there are many other people like that. Yeah, there are many other people like that. Maybe not in the same
Correct.
situation. Maybe not in the same situation, but you have great men through history, regardless of color, who've faced um, um, very difficult circumstances and have been able to overcome these things. But to put them in a realm of and not to say that Malcolm you did, but to put them in a realm of a black nationalist or a person who is pro-black, that's where it gets shaky. for me, I don't know if what your brothers think about it.
I
Well,
understand that. Like,
If I
being a
could,
on the terms of being a black nationalist or a Pan Africanist, I agree. He wouldn't be qualified as that. But a pro black, I would have to give him at least that much credit for being a pro black based on a definition of what the term pro black means. For what he did for his people, I mean,
Would you would
whether
you put
whether
would you,
how you go ahead.
go ahead, brother, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, go ahead. I was done anyway.
Malcolm, would you say instead of putting pro-black, would you just add an adjective to that and say, well, he was pro-black American, rather than just this generic term of being pro-black? Because some of the thoughts and ideas of Douglas is he wasn't trying to be that African kind of situation. He wasn't trying to have that African side kind of situation going on.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to some extent. He wanted to integrate with white people that was attacking him with dogs and stuff. So to an extent, would you not say he's pro-black, even though he was married to a black woman, but what he did for his people is just as much as what Frederick Douglass was trying to do.
No, I would
And
say
people,
that. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
not like I said, people give Dr. King credit, hold him to a high regard, and what he did. Some people they don't. There's pro-blacks and Pan-Africanists and black nationalists that wouldn't even agree with what he was doing, but still give him his credit for taking a stance against white supremacy and racism to at least try to diffuse some of the situations. You know what I'm saying? So that's a touchy subject as well.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Absolutely, brother. Yeah, I would never dismiss Frederick Douglass. I think that what he did was phenomenal for the people, black people living in America, and also King. I wouldn't want to put him in just. I wouldn't want, but the difference between Douglass and King is, I think that King extended his idea of being supportive of this idea of blackness globally. He went to Ghana for the independence celebration with Kwame Nkrumah. He was all throughout the Caribbean. I think that, and he met with several different African leaders. So I think that it extends the outside of the box of being pro-black American. That's the distinction between the two brothers. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well,
so if I could, one, I think you made a good point. We talk about somebody could be pro-black and not be black. Just like there are individuals who aren't Americans, they don't live in America, never been to America, but based on what the propaganda that America propagates, they're pro-America, right? So I think that's a great point that you made about a person can be pro-black and not be black. I think I gave a good analogy of how a person could be pro-American, never been in America, not American, so on and so forth. So I think that's a great idea. But as you stated, and I love what you stated, but about Bawana, is that when you talk about being a black nationalist or Pan-Africanist, there are qualifiers. There are expectations. There's a code of conduct there. I always tell people that when you have a value system, you can predict people's behavior, right? And so one of the things that a value system brings about is you should be able to predict what somebody will not do. So, for example, as a Pan-Africanist, you could predict Bakari is not going to engage in violence against another black person or another African person unless it is to protect his children or his life is on the line. You could predict that. You could predict Bakari is not going to marry or be in a relationship with a member of another racial ethnic group. You could predict that. Right, so there's an aspect of predictability of behavior when someone has a particular value system, and that's what black nationalism or Pan-Africanism tends to bring to the table, rather than, of course, the nebulous term pro-black.
And for me, go ahead, Malcolm.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with Bakari.
Okay, this is for me. This is the reason why I don't like to put so much weight on people who don't necessarily define themselves in the realm of black nationalism or even being a Gaviite. Like I say, there are different kinds of qualifiers because we look, for instance, for example, we look at people like Venus Williams.
Right.
Venus Williams being married to a Serena Williams, I think. One of the two of those ladies.
Yeah, Serena. It's Serena.
Yes, yes, being married to a white person, and people are very offended by that. But from my eyes, she just looks at herself as a Black American, and that there are no qualifiers within that. Well, besides the fact that she's integrated with the greater society, she's American. So I mean, I wouldn't have the same kind of condition. I wouldn't place on her the same kind of conditions that I would place on Dr. Lumumba, because Dr. Lumumba, with
I'm
him
not a
being
doctor yet.
I call him.
We-
Well, we look to the future. We look to the future.
Speaking on the future, man. We speaking on the future, man. Come on.
Brother. We look to the future.
Next
We
year,
forward
next
looking.
year,
Yeah,
next
yeah.
year.
We forward looking, brother. We talking it. We speaking it. But
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we put it into existence.
yes. So I don't put the same kind of conditions on a person like Venus Williams like I would put on a Dr. Lumumba. You know, so I think there's a difference there. That's why I kind of get into these kinds of conversations where she should date this person, or she jump over all these Black people to date this white guy. No. She never came out publicly and stated anything in regards to I am this, I am a Gaviite, I am a Pan-African. She said I'm a great Black American athlete. Full stop. You know, what's the problem?
Right.
I want to add something and kind of slightly go back to when we was talking about King and Frederick Douglass. I think according to their time, especially Frederick Douglass, his ideology was, I mean, if you look at it, it was kind of respected for his time. I think that once a person,
go ahead.
I think that once a person progressed into the ideology of Black freedom in America, I think as it progressed, the final conclusion is Pan-Africanism. You know, I mean, because you see this kind of sentiment with Dr. King, as we mentioned, also with Malcolm X. They were moving towards a more Pan-Africanism view. And so I think that Pan-Africanism is the final conclusion.
No, I kind of disagree with that, Nate. As far as Frederick Douglass is concerned, his ultimate conclusion is to be an American, to blend in, to be a part of the country called America. So as far as Garvey them or the brothers you mentioned, like an X or whatever else, their conclusion was eventually Pan-Africanism, being something other than, you know, they were trying to be African as opposed to Frederick Douglass, who's actually trying to be American. So the ultimate conclusion for Frederick Douglass is to be amalgamated into the American society, which is something different.
And if I could,
Dr. King.
So I have a book here. It's entitled Martin and Malcolm in America, A Dream or a Nightmare. And in this book, it's written by Dr. James Cone, who of course was the individual who coined the term Black liberation theology. But he talks about the history of integrationism before Dr. King, and he talks about Frederick Douglass. And he talks about that although Douglass experienced many disappointments in his fight for justice, he never lost his love for America or his belief that Blacks will soon achieve full freedom in the land of his birth. He quotes Douglass by saying, "I expect to see the colored people of this country enjoying the same freedom as whites," right? And so his goal, optimism, was about Blacks achieving full citizenship rights in America and integrating into the dominant society and culture. Now, during that same period of time, we had, of course, Martin Delany. Now, for those of you who don't know, that Black nationalism comes out of the spirit of course, slave revolts, right? And we know slave revolts were based on what? African cultural attention. So for Black nationalism, the concept of a Black nationalist is I am African first and foremost above anything. For a Pan-Africanist, it is what? I am African first before I am anything else. So the central claim of Black nationalists, past and present, is that Black people are primarily Africans and not Americans. I'm actually reading from the book, right? And unlike integrationists, nationalists do not define their significance or purpose as a people by appealing to the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, or even the white man's religion of Christianity. On the contrary, nationalists define their identity by their resistance to America and their determination to create a society based on their own African history and culture.
I guess what I was saying, do you think maybe possibly he could have, just hypothetically speaking, if if he could have been led down to a road of Pan-Africanism if he would have probably
Eventually,
seen one?
I would say no, because his contemporary was Martin Delany, who was a Pan-Africanist,
I
right?
got you.
And they worked together in Pittsburgh on the North Star newspaper. And matter of fact, there's a section in here where
And what's the name of that book, Doc?
the name of the book is Malcolm and Martin in America, Martin and Malcolm in America, A Dream or a Nightmare. And there's a section in here where Delany has a conversation with Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass says, well, I'm proud that God made me a man. And Frederick Douglass said, well, I'm proud that God made me a black man.
you mean Martin Delany?
Yes. I'm trying to find the actual section in here.
Was Martin? You said Martin Delany. His grandfather was an African chief.
Yes, absolutely.
So was Martin Delany? Martin Delany wasn't a slave, was he?
No, he was born free, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Right. Yeah, because Frederick Douglass was born to slavery, and like I said, man, it's Frederick Douglass and Martin Delany is kind of like Dr. King and Malcolm X.
Right, absolutely. So here we go. It says, so while Douglass is typically integration style said, I thank God for making me a man simply, he reported that Delany always thanks him for making him a black man. The other issue, Douglass in his political and activism, he relied on white philanthropic support, while of course Delany, his contemporary, advocated for what? Black economic independence, so we wouldn't be dependent on, of course, white largesse. So, and then they, once again, they were contemporaries. They were engaging in black activism at the same time. Right.
Right.
So
they still have
able to make a distinction between black nationalists and Pan-Africanists, and the other being, of course, the integrationalists, because of their fundamental core concepts and belief was Douglass believed that he was an American first, and Delany believed that he was African first.
Right.
I mean, so I'm sorry, go ahead, Malcolm.
I'm trying to was the terms Pan-Africanism and Black nationalists known during their time?
No. So from a scholarly standpoint, Martin Delany is considered to be his life and his activism was considered in the proto Pan-Africanist era, meaning this is someone who practiced the core concepts of Pan-Africanism before the term was actually coined. For those of you who are in the know, and those who are not in the know, Pan-Africanism, the term Pan-Africanism, was turned in the late 19th, turn of the 20th century by the Trinidadian-born barrister Henry Sylvester Williams, who actually was the individual who created the first Pan-African Congress that led to the subsequent Pan-African Congresses that were led by one W.B. Du Bois.
I got a question. I got a question, Doc. There is a term called Ethiopianism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I think that term may have preceded Pan-Africanism. I don't know if you know, could give us some dates on that, or if you did any reading about that term itself.
Yeah, so many people would argue that Ethiopianism is connected to Pan-Africanism. Many people argue that, of course, this is part of the proto-Pan-Africanist era and that it's seen as a derivative of that ideology. Just like as we know that for Pan-Africanism, not every Pan-Africanist, it's not a requirement to be a Pan-Africanist that you repatriate to Africa, right? However, it tends to be a derivative, right? But this whole concept of Ethiopianism was one, Black people, of course, this is even, of course, during the Holocaust of enslavement, gained pride from the fact that Ethiopia was the only African nation that hadn't been colonized. Right. And so we do know at one point, all of Africa was called Ethiopia, particularly in the Middle Ages.
Right.
As a result, many Black people, including Marcus Garvey, at one time took pride in the fact that Ethiopia had never been colonized, and people kind of started to identify themselves in many ways, shape, or form as, of course, being Ethiopian.
So can we get back to the woman question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Let me ask your brothers a question. Can you effectively lead a black movement and have a white wife or partner?
And now I would say emphatically.
No,
So when you say
no,
a
because
black
what they,
movement, you're talking about when you say a black movement. I'm sorry, Brother Malcolm. Are you saying like a black nationalist movement, a radical black movement, or are you talking like an integrationist black movement, like the
Nah,
SPLA?
nah, don't have to be a good integrationist. Okay, okay. Let me give an example.
Yes, sir.
Kwame Nkrumah.
Yes.
Kwame Nkrumah. If you look at his wife, I think that she was like North African,
Yeah, she was Egyptian.
but if I mean to American eyes, she would be what was considered to be a lady of the. Which, as a matter of fact, she would be a non-black or African person to America or Western eyes. Let me don't use, you just use that to
Mm-hmm.
Western eyes. People would view her as a non-black person. So my question is whether, and I understand the political implications of what he was trying to do,
Right.
but my question is,
I mean, I read about why he chose to marry her in
yes,
this
yes,
idea of
yes,
Pan-African
yes,
unity, but I'm
yes,
with you, brother. Go
yes.
right ahead.
So can you run an effective black organization, movement, society, whatever, and believe in all these terms of black empowerment, etc., but have a white wife? Can you do that?
No, I don't think you can.
I would no, I wouldn't trust it. Me personally, if I had
Say
somebody
you won't
trying to,
trust it.
yeah, no, because let me tell you why. Think about it. Let's look at all these black organizations right now that have white people within them. Let's
Okay.
be honest. If we as black people that had these black organizations that had a few white people in them that claim to be helping us, if a race war broke out right now, you know damn well they wouldn't be on our
Okay.
side. Think about it. They're white people in white America. And if we were to really rally against the black empowerment movement, take it to the full extent of fighting white supremacy, do you really believe that those white people would fight on our side against their own people? Most of them are joining these organizations for the integrationalist side of it. Because there's no way as a white person you would really fight your own people for the sake of another race. And you're
So
good in your country.
no John Browns and his sons. That's out of the equation.
But like I mentioned earlier, that's special occasions. That's not norm. I mean, those are what I would call anomalies. I mean, and I
Okay,
wouldn't make that the
Yeah.
general rule.
okay, that's true. That's a fair statement. Okay, I have another question. So, how black does she have to be? Because as we are in the West, we're mixed
Mm,
with different kinds of people. So, let's say a lady from like New Orleans. They have them red boats in New
Mhm.
Orleans. You know, and,
Shout out to the 504. Shout out to the 504. I've been in Nolans. They call it Nolans.
yeah. A person that got right, where a person you can't, where the majority of people won't necessarily be able to tell because she has like racial ambiguity. Would
Hmm.
would that person be still be able to have, or if she has like some of these organizations now, they have their significant others, they have white mothers, even though they may have black fathers, they're mixed and stuff like that. Could they be able to lead a black movement with a black man at the helm?
I mean, I look at
uh,
guys like I don't know if you watch Black Power Media Network. I mean, you got like guys like Dr. Jared Ball. I think he's of mixed race, and that brother really goes. He really goes hard. So I can't really hold on. I'm so sorry about that. Hold on.
Yeah, because my thing is, how black do they have to be? Do they have to have two
well,
black parents? Do they have to have two
yeah,
black
because
parents?
that's a great question because Elijah Muhammad, he
Yes.
didn't both his parents weren't black. I think his mother was white, and
No, no. Yeah, black parents.
he had two black. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for me the waters become. That's why I don't like to deal with bedroom politics, man. Because the waters get murky.
And this is what I tell people from a Pan Africanist perspective: we don't care how you got here, right? Because you can't control how you got here. But what you can control is your political frame of reference, right? And so I give an example, and I always state this, that oftentimes if you look at some of the fathers and mothers of Pan Africanism, they were a mixed racial ancestry, right? Mixed racial heritage.
Sorry about that.
That's quite all right. When you look at one T. Thomas Fortune, for example, right? This brother was an octoroon, for crying out loud, but he was blacker than you, all four of us combined. Literally, he was the editor of Marcus Garvey's Negro World newspaper, right? And so I look at a person's political frame of reference, right? Their values, the principles,
Right.
because you, like you say, you can't get in bedroom politics because the child, you can't control how you got here. None of us controlled how we got here.
Right.
So, some people win the genetic lottery and some people don't. This is how you get LeBron James and Michael Jordan. And you get other people like myself who, hey, you know what? I was just good on the playground. So
you gotta prove that. Show us some tapes. Give us some tapes.
right. So, you can't control how you got here. Right. And so that's why, I don't touch that, but I look at a person because, and then I say this all the time, we have black people who are blue, black, purple, who are what? Black skin and white in the white mask.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
Yeah, I can see that. That's my problem too, because I've encountered, because where I live, we had several black leaders, and these guys are black Europeans. Some of them, So for me, I could get with the idea. You have to really understand what a political philosophy and ideology of a person is before you level certain judgments. However, I still stick to my original position where if you say that, hey, I am a Garveyite, if you say, hey, I am a Pan-African, then there are some qualifiers that I expect to see when you have certain ideologies.
I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, because I think with something of that magnitude,
Go right ahead, brother.
You there, brother Nate?
yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I was just
you good
saying
now.
that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just saying that I totally agree with the brother. I just think that anything of that magnitude of Pan-Africanism, that to me, in my honest opinion, in many cases is the final solution
Mm-hmm.
to global black liberation, period. And is beneficial to black survival. So with that being said, in constructing organizations modeled with that ideology, I think that many people of other ethnic groups, would not necessarily support that. It would be a very rare occasion that may happen. And again, I think that's what I would call an anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, um, the general rule would be to marry into your own cultural and ethnic group. I mean,
So let me ask you this: when a person marries, because now you're making a lifelong commitment to someone, right? Where we presume that the expectation is going to be a lifelong commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Is who you marry and who you love a reflection of your values?
Damn.
That's the question for the panel.
yeah, I think to a certain degree it is.
Yeah.
I mean, because
Why not?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Why not to the full degree?
Well, say for instance, if I marry a sister that she's not necessarily she doesn't necessarily have a Pan Africanism ideology. That doesn't mean that as time progresses, she won't come to that conclusion also, due to my influence.
So you saying you were marrying
Well,
a potential? I'm messing with you, man.
No, go ahead,
no,
bro.
my thing my thing is, I think when you're dealing with views of black nationalism and Pan African stuff like that's more mental social version versus a relationship that's more emotional, dealing with the terms of the heart. So you're going to have a different affection towards your woman versus how you view other things as far as your people in general. Now, she, because you can have black people who won't be about that at all, but y'all can still click on other things, and you'll still love that woman enough to want to marry her. And so that's kind of hard because I don't think you can fully. That should fully reflect who you are as a person. I think part of who you are as a person is who you marry because you still have other aspects that are outside of your person you're marrying that define who you are as a whole as a person.
Okay.
Whoever you marry shouldn't define you as a whole of a person versus because you're still going to be who you are whether you with that woman or not or with that
Brother,
significant other or not.
So
hey,
let me
brother,
ask this right quick,
real quick.
brother. Go ahead.
Brother Malcolm, I know you haven't been married because I've been married before.
You're right. You're right.
You see,
So
people gonna look at her, and when they see her, they're gonna say, "Brother Malcolm." Irrespective.
so let me ask you this here, brother Lumumba. Would you? I'm just hypothetically speaking. If you had a chance to marry, let me say, a woman in the industry,
Industry.
like in the entertainment industry.
Industry.
I'm trying to think of, yeah, I'm trying to think of, I was going to say Meg Thee Stallion, but that's too young. But what I'm just saying,
Viola
like a
Davis.
person of her, let's just say a person of her caliber. You, as being Pan African ideology, would you marry somewhat of that caliber?
Someone who was
Hell
into, no, anyone knows me. No, I want to marry someone who promoted degenerate behavior. Absolutely not.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute now.
Right.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, Doc. If I would say this, I would say this. No, hold on. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. If the marriage is one of convenience or if it's a political marriage, that's a different thing. Because Dr. Lumumba has the ability to sway a person who has the ear of many, 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 many people. Hold on, give
No.
me a second about it.
Go ahead.
No, give me a minute.
Go ahead.
Give me a
Or
minute.
you got it.
So if he was to look at it in a rational way, right? Because I feel like sometimes we dispense with reason when it comes to dating, but we use reason for everything else, and I think that sometimes that's
Right.
wrong. But I think
I
that
agree. That's right.
yeah. So if he was to look at that completely from a rational perspective and say, hey, you know what? Let me try to spread my Gavi Pan Africanist message, and I'm gonna use this lady to do that. Now, now, and him
It
doing
wouldn't.
that, and him doing that, he may sacrifice a whole lot of personal things in him doing that. But the effect of him doing that may be greater as opposed to him just solely looking at his personal interest in dating a woman and just dispensing with reason and saying, well, I just love her for loving her sake, which is a completely different issue. And I think that with us sometimes, I think that we
Right.
dispense reason when we date our partners. And I find that sometimes that could not necessarily be the best thing to do.
Right.
So
Right.
let me say this in response to what you were saying. The answer for me would be an emphatic no, right?
Right.
I don't even like to be around that type of element, right? I remember I was at a gym once, and there was some sisters in there. They were working out, doing like a women's fitness group. And there was a sister in there who was a baddie. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get on my max shit. I'm gonna go over there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And, I mean, this is true story though. So what ends up happening is, but I'm observing her from a distance. She started acting ratchet. She's twerking, shaking her ass all over the place. So I didn't even approach her, right? Because I can't even be around that type of element. It just is unreal.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the answer would be no. The other issue was You know, I've been around long enough to know. Listen, you ain't changing no grown person's mind. They
Sure
gonna
ain't.
be what they be. Right?
That's true.
And we're gonna go back to Frederick Douglass real quick. What did Frederick Douglass say? It's better to build strong men, build strong boys than repair broken men. Right. So you get somebody who's 25, 28, 30 years old, whoever they are, that's who they are. That's their personality. That ain't changing. Right. And so many people say, well, if you look at Malcolm X's life and he changed, well, if we want to be honest, Malcolm X returned to what he was when he was a child.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Malcolm and the Black nationalism, the Pan-Africanism, Black pride, that was what he was being taught and inculcated in his subconscious from the moment he could comprehend.
That's true.
Yeah, because his dad was a follower of Marcus Garvey, wasn't he, or something like that?
Yeah. Yes, his father was a Garvey. His mother wrote articles for the Negro World newspaper, and so as a result, he lost his way. Most brothers do when their father is no longer in the picture. Right, and so, and if you ever get a chance to watch the documentary "Make It Plain," which of course is a great documentary on Malcolm X, one of his brothers had mentioned that when they learned about the Nation of Islam, they said, "But this ain't any different than what we were being taught by our father under the teachings of the great Marcus Garvey."
Mm.
I think there's an importance there, but just for me personally, no, I couldn't even be around someone that long who disseminated the type of vitriolic rhetoric, in my opinion, that Megan Thee Stallion does.
I got you.
Yeah, I couldn't be around that. I would end up hanging myself with wax dental floss. I can't be around. Part of this is I'm older. Part of this is what?
Right.
I'm wiser. What? I'm a principled individual. I have children. Right. My kids will be looking at me like, what the hell? So this is what you about now? Everything you told us your entire life. So it just doesn't work for me. Like I said, when I was 21, I was 21. I'm not 21 anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that doesn't appeal to me. Right. When I was 21, I love seeing women shaking their asses. I'm a grown man now. That doesn't do anything for me.
Right.
So, Doc, you don't have time to civilize the savages.
I'm sorry, I said that one more time.
You don't have time to civilize the savages.
Well, I'm not gonna call anyone that, but what I will say is I'm not into changing anyone. You got to be what I want when I meet you.
Yeah, exactly. Correct.
I hear the brothers.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for me.
Let's talk about the other topic that you brought up, Bakari, earlier, as far as interracial relationships and the hypocrisy of when a black man dates outside his race versus when a black woman does it, and how you said it's shamed when a black man does it, but it's celebrated when a black woman does it. What are you guys' opinions on that?
Can I ask who's out there celebrating black women dating outside their race?
The group Black Women. they always do. They've been done it. Now I don't know about y'all, because there's people who say that. Do you guys qualify Meghan Markle as a black woman?
I don't know. I don't know who she is really. I
would say she's.
She phenotypically no, she don't look like a black woman.
If you saw her on the street, I think she was black. But when she married, I thought her mother was half black.
Well, I don't. From what I've read, her mother is black.
Yeah, she was like.
For the context of this conversation, we'll say that her mom that she's a black woman. Go ahead.
Okay.
For the purposes of this.
So yeah, when she married Prince Harry, when Meghan Markle married Prince Harry, black women started talking about they're saved now, because for some reason when one black woman does something, it's like it's credited to all black women for some reason. But that's not ideal, but that's just how they do things. But black women said there's hope for us. They were celebrating Meghan Markle being married, not because he was a prince, but more because he was a white man.
Well,
And
can I ask you, brother Malcolm, right quick? When you referring to they, who is the they that you're referring to? Like,
black American women, like it was you can look up the YouTube videos of it. Like
okay,
they had the tweets, they had the Facebook post, all that. It was celebrated in black because they looked at her as a, like I said, a black woman who to me still looks white, but they started to make claims of that. Just like whenever you see these, there's other interviews or little mini videos when black women will marry outside their race and or date a white guy, and you have other black women talking about they'll have cute babies because once again, most black people or black women in general, like they fetishize over uh the mixed genetics of black and white children. Well, you know, the good hair, the skin tone and stuff like that. But if a black man does it, it's shamed. Why you do? You must hate your mom. You ain't. You know they shame a black man for it. Now black men usually don't really care too much if either or happens. Like they don't care about a black man dating outside his race or a black woman doing it. It's usually, like I said, the black women that react in a positive manner to other black women and a negative manner to black men when they do it. Like I said, there's plenty of videos on YouTube. I think Bakari could probably pull a few up right now and we could see it.
now to be okay, yeah. To be fair, I want to make this point. Do you think possibly that, and I'm not excusing it either way it go. Well, I guess what I'm saying, you're saying that they are celebrating, black women getting with white men or other men of different ethnicities, correct?
Usually they only highlight it when it's a white man. I don't really see them
Okay,
do it with other races of men. It's
but
mainly
mainly white.
white men.
All right. So,
Yes.
do you think that may be kind of like a response to doing the black exploitation era, where black men were also celebrated for getting with white men? I mean, I'm sorry, with white women uh, during that period, because that was highly celebrated during that period also.
What period are you talking about?
The black exploitation era.
Yeah. I'm not too familiar with that. You can elaborate more about that?
Like during the Dolomite period, you had black men that was paraded as being pimps, and they were basically getting with white women and pimping them out. Some of them having
Oh,
relations with white women on film, and that was considered sticking it to the man in to a certain
I know what
degree.
you're talking about. Yeah, yeah. So that was in reality or just on film?
That was both in reality and film.
Okay, because
So
I'm
there
talking
was
in
a
modern.
period that was celebrated. I mean, during that particular time, is getting with a white woman as higher status.
To get back to stick it to the man.
I would
Yeah, that's what they used it. I mean, that's what they were saying, that them getting with a white woman was, in a sense, them getting sticking it back to the man, back to white
Right.
men.
That.
I would say the reason why black women celebrate is because it's a childhood dream. If
Thank you.
if you was to look at the largest selling product for girls at a certain age, it is a Barbie doll. And who is that Barbie relate to? Ken. They always have this image of her being the princess and him being Prince Charming. So to actually actualize that in real life, to see Meghan Markle marry an actual prince, in their mind is that they live, we live vicariously through other people. It's like
Yeah.
actually realizing that childhood fantasy they had when they were little girls. This is the programming that goes into to our kids at very young ages. So when you see it,
Except for my daughter, but
except for dogs
Right.
and all these brothers on the panel, I'm assuming all these brothers on the panel as well. But when
Yeah.
they get to a certain age, they see that and they look at that and say, "Wow, she actually accomplished the feat that we all really want to accomplish deep down inside, but she actually lived it." So they are actually living vicariously through her. I believe that some black women in the West, I believe that they settle for us but that ultimate prize is the
Yeah,
Prince Charming. And Prince Charming, guess what? He don't look like us.
I think it's more
I
not.
can kind of see that.
I think it's more not Barbie doll toys. It's just the upbringing as well. Like in the black community, we know that most mixed kids are glorified more than the actual darker skin or actual black children. We know this to be true. Colorism is a real thing in the black community, and we see how those attributes of mixed children are glorified, and how you get talked about if you're too black or something wrong with your hair and stuff like that. So some women achieve that as well because there's a lot of self-hate that is taught to black children by other black people
Right.
bringing.
Let me tap in real quick, Malcolm, brother Malcolm. So this was the actual article that was written by this brother entitled "Why" by Ralph Richard Banks, who's a professor at Stanford University. Why more black women should consider marrying white men. And the thing about this that makes it rather ironic is this brother is married to a black woman, but after Kamala Harris and Kenyatta Brown Jackson, we know Kamala Harris is vice president, Supreme Court Jackson, I don't want to butcher a name, but both are married to a white man. He advocated stating that basically, if they married white, maybe they would do better in life, right? So we see there's still this concept and idea of centering blackness. But I bring this up because I actually had my daughter read this article. Mind you, my daughter is 12. She read the article this man wrote, and she was literally disgusted. She's 12. And she was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Right? So you should Google that article.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, but this is real. Brother Zongo, I'm about to tap you in right now. But it was wild, though. I actually had my daughter read the article. That's why when I said, no, not my daughter, that wasn't hyperbole. I've actually had her read information like this that is promoting this concept and idea. And of course, she was vehemently against that. But with that being said, let's go back to Brother Zongo. I'm going to let you tap in, give your thoughts.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir.
Hey, brother.
How's it going, everyone? Oh,
Doing
well,
just
I
fine.
think,
What's going on, man?
I mean, I'm not a subject matter expert on this particular issue, and I'm from Ghana. I've been to America for the past 2.5 years. So when I was in Missouri, going to college, I mean, in Raleigh, Missouri, it's predominantly white neighborhood. And generally on campus, when you see a lot of brothers like dating, they kind of date outside of the race. I don't think primarily because they didn't like to be with black women. I think because the availability of black women were very scarce in that area.
So
That's why.
let me ask this question. First off, who in this conversation has gone to college?
I went to college, but the community college.
Okay, have you gone to college?
I went to school, yeah.
Okay, Brother Bawana, have you gone to college?
To school, yes.
Okay, bag 761, 761st. Have you gone to college?
Yes, but I didn't finish.
Okay, but did any of us attend the PWI? I attended the PWI.
No.
So
I did too.
Okay, I'm bringing this up to say that for many brothers, they're not dating. They're just trying to get it with a woman to fill a biological need. It's not dating.
You're absolutely right. But I mean, because that was on campus. But when I had an internship to go to Springfield, Missouri, and yet another city which was predominantly white society, most of the brothers you see over there, they kind of date white. That was very understandable because the white population were pretty much dominant in that city. So it was really understandable that the black man can probably like date a white woman, which is fairly understandable. I just wanted to share this perspective so that you can understand. Because as someone coming from outside, I mean, I come from Ghana, predominantly black. I'm used to seeing a lot of like black people every day.
Mhm.
My first time arrival in America was in O'Hare Airport, Chicago. I was surprised to see a lot of black people over there. But when I moved all the way to Missouri, I stopped seeing a lot of black people over there. Anytime when I moved to Illinois, I see a lot of black people. I start to develop interest in black people. But when I go back to Missouri, um, yeah, you don't see a lot of black people over there.
Understood.
Right.
Understood.
So I'm just speaking from that angle. And currently, I'm in Washington, working
Washington
over here.
State or Washington D.C.
Washington State, and
Okay.
where I stay, you barely see a lot of black people over here too as
Okay.
well.
So I take it you're not in Seattle or the Seattle Tacoma area.
I mean, Olympia, right next to Tacoma. Yeah. I'm
Okay,
working over there.
got you. Hey, if you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit that notification bell.
So
We're
when
having
I came,
the conversation.
yeah, when I came here, I had to ask some brothers over here, African Americans, that where can I see a lot of black people over here? So they told me to go to Tacoma or Seattle.
Right.
You understand? So we barely see a lot of like black people over here. Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to share my perspective so you can see that.
Absolutely.
Not a lot of people stay in a predominantly black cities. From my own personal observation, in cities that I go to, you barely see a lot of black people. And sometimes I kind of like give it a pass. Like, when I see black men kind of dating interracially, it's really understandable. It's not like they wanted to date interracially, but because that was the women available for them, you know.
But that's why I say there's a difference between dating someone and simply getting with a woman to fill a biological need. Those are two different things. When you're dating someone, you're actually courting someone with the possibility of but you're actually entertaining the possibility of a relationship. So those are two.
No.
But what I'm saying, I just see like marriage couples, like people, white women, kids.
Well,
You see a lot of interracial kids over there. And to be honest with you, most of these white people who get married with black people over there, they don't like even white people, by the way. When I was in Springfield, Missouri, they like to be black. They like black culture. It's really interesting, to be frank with you. And I heard even this conversation when I went to the barber shop was an African American. He was from Kansas City, Missouri, and he was even astounded that how is that possible that white people hate white people and then love black culture.
Zongo, there's a difference between liking and fetishizing.
Thank
There's
you.
a difference, brother.
Mm-hmm.
There's also something called quality.
Hey, let Bag 76 first. I hope I'm saying that right. Tap in, be part of the conversation. What do you have to share, brother?
Yeah, well, I'm from the West Coast, and it's about quality. There's just not the quality out here. I hate to say it, but it's just how it is. Their values are different, their standards, how they act, carry themselves, and it's difficult to be in a relationship with the sister because one, there's not that many of them, and then two, the ones that are out just don't have standards. Their standards are actually very low.
There's not that many of them.
Well, just there's not that many of them. I mean, everybody thinks that there's a lot of black people on the West Coast. There isn't.
Okay.
There just isn't.
Actually, yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, there aren't a lot of black people on the West Coast. That is true. Yeah.
You know, so it's really hard. And then the ones that you have, I kid you not, very few people thinking pro black or just like you said, Pan-Africanism or FBA even. Any of that, black national, nobody's talking that. It's all about have fun, do whatever. Really, nobody's thinking about retirement, buying a home. It's all about partying and having fun. So I've experienced
that with a sister before. Where we were in a long-term relationship, and then she was like, you know what? I just want to have fun. Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I can speak, this may be anecdotal, but I can speak from personal experience that I've come across a lot of women even in my age group who have espoused those type of thoughts, and you're like, yo, you're too old to be thinking like this.
Thank you.
I agree with that, brother, because anytime.
So let me say this though: do you think that's representative of just the culture of America now? Because when I talk, so I work in higher ed, so you know I'm in a multicultural environment. And when I have conversations with men of other racial ethnic groups, they share the same things about women of their own racial ethnic groups.
It's definitely from feminism. It has nothing to do with feminism. It has to do with America.
On the part of women wanting to be sexually liberating, that was one of the things that feminism preached. So, like I said, it stems from, if you look back, that's where most of that started. All that party girl wanting to be free type stuff, free from the man with principles and morals and the upbringing and having a family and wanting to be wild and stuff. I'm telling you, the origin of that was from feminism. That was one of the things that they talked about was what? Sexual freedom. And that's when being an illegitimate mother went to single motherhood, and that was glorified and stuff like that. I'm not saying that's the whole impact or whole thing. Yes, the culture itself is based off what you're talking about. But as far as the origin of it, it would go back to feminism, what they preached about that, being free sexually and stuff like that.
Well, people have always been free sexually. People, if you did DNA tests on people today, you'd find out a lot of them probably aren't even related in the same family. I think people I understand the feminism part, but people have been cheating and sexually free way before feminism started in the 60s and 70s.
It wasn't a high number though. Like these women are out of it now. Like before then, women would shame other women for doing that stuff.
True.
Like the women of today cannot go back.
I'm sorry, brother. I want to interject right quick. So the term "mama's baby, papa's maybe," that's an old school term. I think that term was before feminism.
It was. I'm not saying those things didn't happen. What I'm saying, it wasn't as prevalent. It was not like the hoeing of today was not the same as it was 100 years ago. The women of 100 years ago still had more respect for themselves. Their marriage rate, you could marry. Okay, like right now, there's a low, probably 0.001.9% chance you could marry a virgin. 100 years ago, you was almost guaranteed one. The way that women are now today versus 100 years ago has drastically changed. And the biggest impact that it had was the origin of feminism when they wanted to sexually express themselves. I'm not saying that them acting wild and stuff like that was before that. Yes, but it was a small number. Most women in the majority still have respect for themselves. The marriage rates were higher. The single mother rate was lower. They wasn't out here just having sex with any and everybody like that. You had some women that did that. That's been there since the beginning of time. I'm talking about how it's normalized and how high of a number it is now versus before feminism came. It's a drastic change. I'm not blaming everything on feminism, but I'm saying that's the origin of where it started to become acceptable in society on a massive level. You know what I'm saying? People, even when people were still cheating back then, they still had shame for it. Now you see people every day on YouTube and all these viral videos of them cheating on their husbands and stuff like that, and they don't even care. You know what I'm saying? And they don't mind walking out on their man just to go out there and be a whore. I'm not saying it's feminism's the whole thing, but it's the origin of it. That's what I'm saying. It's just the origin. If you go back and look at it, it changed.
Yeah, one more nuance, right quick. Do you think maybe it's due to exposure as opposed to back then in the past that they didn't have access to social media to post things of their personal lives, different television shows we grew up in the age of Maury and Jerry Springer. So do you think that have something to do with it also, like the media aspect?
It depends what class of woman you're talking about, because women that work, go ahead.
Let me say this real quick, because I grew up with Jerry. So I was in middle school when Jerry Springer became really hot. And I remember my dad hated that show, hated it. And I was like, I think it's cool. They be fighting and everything. My dad was like, man, if I can't watch that crap, I'm going to I just had to bring that up.
I watched it.
Remember that.
I want to push back on something Malcolm said. I want to push back on that. I think that the United States always had whore culture and prostitution culture. Now, what I'll back it up and saying is, if you read the book called A Renegade History of the United States by Thaddeus Russell, he goes into detail in describing the regular life of how America was in the 1700s and going up forward and forward and forward. Just read that book. I think that they always had culture. I think the difference is when the brother said social media now, we could see it. Masses amounts of people are able to see it and talk about it because there's so much in the Western zeitgeist. You could see it and watch it on television. You could watch the episodes of what happens in family court. Daddies, maybe it's live and in Front Street. Whereas back in the day, it wasn't as pronounced because we didn't have the invention of social media. I think that that's the difference. I don't think that human behavior has changed. I think it's right now we just have the cameras on it. I think that's the difference.
No, what's the difference is, first off,
I wanted to ask
the thing of
one quick question though. Let me ask a quick question. When you say like pro-black, what do you exactly mean? Like, you mean like an activist that represents the whole black population of the country, or you mean like a regular person in a neighborhood could be? Hello, can you hear me?
Who are you talking to? Which one?
You asking Card?
I'm asking Lumumba.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought you were talking about Malcolm. So we augmented the question, right? We edited the question to, can you be a black nationalist or a pan-Africanist, right? And date interracially or marry interracially. And the reason why we did that was because we know that this whole ideal and concept of pro-black is a nebulous term that means a multitude of things to what? A very large group of people. So we augmented the question to, can you be a black nationalist or a pan-Africanist? Because as Brother Bawana stated, this is a situation in which, a person could be pro-black, they could be pro-America and not be black, or even an American, or even from America, even visited America, based on the propaganda and what they view or perceive things to be.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one thing that I noticed. Anytime that as someone from outside coming to America, I mean, I only hear about pro-black conversation or pan-African conversation on YouTube. When I go outside and meet black people on the street, they're not pro-black, they're not pan-Africans. So sometimes I find it very hard to kind of navigate. Where do the black Americans who are pan-Africans or pro-blacks, where are they? Like, are they pretty much in predominantly black cities?
So I think I'm glad you asked that question. So one of the weaknesses that I've made an argument since the 1960s when it comes to black people who advocate black radical politics, particularly black nationalism, pan-Africanism, etc., is that there aren't any institutions by and large, right? Back then, there was actually brick and mortar institutions that you could go to and be part of. That doesn't tend to be the case nowadays. And as a result, this is why most people argue it doesn't exist. Pan-Africanism is dead. It's an antiquated ideology that has promised very much and delivered very little because of the lack of actual institutions, brick and mortar institutions that one can actually see in the community and then, of course, go to. I always use an example of the Christian church. I would argue by and large that most black people aren't inherently Christian. We know that for many black people, particularly in America, is a family tradition, right? You can even argue this on the continent, right, depending on where you are, based on, the history of colonialism. But what we tend to find is whenever a black person has a problem, they find their ass in the church, right? Because one, that's all they know, and two, there's an that they see and they can go to. And even though you may not agree with the theological approach that they're teaching, they got a food pantry, right? They may have a some type of a thing where child watch, where they watch people's children, right? There's a belief, even though we know oftentimes religious institutions in America are sites where pedophiles are lingering and attacking children, and oftentimes the religious leaders provide cover for the pedophiles, and this has been documented. However, but because this is all they know, and there's an actual brick and mortar institution, they find it behind going into the church.
And I agree with you because I mean you can be religious and still be Pan-African. I mean, I'm a Muslim, but I do listen to most of your conversations and on Dinah's show I mean, I agree with a lot of like the black conversation that we have a lot of the times, and yeah, I mean, I think you can have your own religious belief and
Mm-hmm.
still be Pan-African, you
Well,
know.
absolutely, absolutely. We know that Malcolm X was a Muslim, Marcus Garvey was a Catholic, right? So Pan Africanism is based on a political ideology, not a religious belief. But with that said, Brother Dante Kaysen, my brother-in-law, is tapped in, so we want to give him the floor and let him, give his perspective on the conversation that we're having. Go ahead, brother. We can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Better now.
He's
Can you
muted.
guys hear me now?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Okay, yeah, you're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. You're not muted, so you can go ahead and talk. He may not be able to hear us.
Okay.
There you go.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you, bro.
All right, so we're having some technical difficulties, so we're going to let him tap back in. Go ahead, Brother Zongo. Or Brother Bag.
I got a question for you. Black Wall Street, were they Pan-Africanist or Black nationalist, or were they just capitalist?
I would argue from what I've read, and I haven't done a deep dive in this literature, right? My scholarship is rooted in Black cultural centers and, of course, Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism. But from what I read, I would argue that they were Black capitalists.
That's kind of what I figured, which is interesting in itself. They were very successful in what they were doing. Plus, they weren't afraid to fight, and they did fight, which is actually very rare in a Black movement. A lot of them don't fight.
I would disagree with that. And the reason why I'm going to bring this up is there's a great brother. He's a brother. He's a professor of African American history at The Ohio State University. And his name is Dr. Hassan Johnson. I actually got a couple of his books. But I took a class on the civil rights movement, teaching the civil rights movement, because I teach African American history. And one of the things that I learned in his class, of course, this was a doctoral course, is that this whole concept or idea of Black people being nonviolent is something that is ahistorical and only began during the civil rights movement. And that even the narrative of nonviolence was a bit of a misnomer, because Dr. King argued that they should be nonviolent when they are engaging in political activism. He did not believe that nonviolence was a philosophy that one should practice in their personal life. For example, in his actual autobiography, and I have his autobiography right here, I'm going to grab it, entitled The Autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr., edited by Claiborne Carson. He talks about a conversation he had with Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture, at his dining room table, in which he told Stokely Carmichael, this is not a question of, if someone breaks into your home, should you use a gun to confront the robber or burglar? So this idea and concept of Black people not resisting in a violent manner is something that is not historically accurate. And we could go all the way back to what the Maroon societies in Brazil and Central America and Florida. We could talk about the litany of slave revolts, of course, here in the Western world. We could talk about the shipboard insurrections. I actually have a book on it entitled If We Must Die, right? Shipboard insurrections in the era of the Atlantic slave trade, where there was over 200 documented shipboard insurrections. So this idea was that Black people resisted, and we resisted violently since the moment we have been brought to the Western world.
No, what I was referring to is that Black Wall Street actually picked up arms, and this is after slavery. I know they had slave revolts and things like that, but after all the slave revolt, I think they were one of the most powerfulest resistance modern day as far as picking up your arms and actually fighting back the oppressor, which were the white people destroying their town. I don't remember any Muslims that did that, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, any of them. And what I'm saying is I was impressed with Black Wall Street and the fact of what they created and were willing to fight and die for what they believed in. I don't see anybody in any Black movement, Marcus Garvey, anybody that fought the way those people fought. Do you?
Well, you could look at what happened in Rosewood. That would be one example.
Okay.
Rosewood, Florida. You could look at the Deacons for Defense in North Carolina. That was led.
These are modern day people, but they weren't associated with Pan-Africanism or the Nation of Islam or anything like that, correct?
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, okay. Okay. I get your point now.
Yeah, I really appreciate these people that built up something that actually were willing to fight and die for it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think that the idea of fighting shouldn't stop at just guns and arms. I think that China right now is waging a war against the United States, but they are fighting economically.
Facts.
They are fighting on economic grounds, and I think that when we just restrict the argument in terms of warfare and fighting to a gun battle, I think that that's a mistake, because you could win battles on different fronts. If China was to go to war, a physical war, like what you suggesting with America, then
I never suggested going to war with America. I'm just saying that there were periods of
about the idea of warfare, just the idea itself, just hypothetically, if we talk about the idea of warfare itself, if we fight, if the blacks in the United States of America, right, some of the blacks was to fight the military armed forces, like you were suggesting, unfortunately, we would get, because I consider myself as being one of your brothers, we would have gotten slaughtered, completely slaughtered. And I think that. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Well, nobody was talking about fight. Oh, go ahead.
Well, my thing is, I think I was understanding what you were saying as far as how these organizations all build up a black front in the community, and then like. For most of my thing that I've witnessed throughout my life, I see a lot of these black organizations fighting each other.
And
not as terms as physical, but like that's why I think you was getting at. Like, they stand up to speak out against white supremacy, but yet they'll still call out other black people. Like, that's crazy to me. And that's an issue that we have for ourselves. And we'll fight each other. And another thing, to your point, is a black man will step on another black man's shoe in the club and shoot him dead. But when the white man kill your brother or your sister, all you want to do is march. And that is an issue that I have with our people. I cannot stand that. And it's a sign of weakness. If you got to, because black people don't think they have the power. And I got to say, you do. If you can shoot your brother or your sister sitting on the porch, if you can shoot your grandma in the kitchen or the baby in the cradle, you can't tell me you can't take those same guns and use them against the people that's actually killing your brothers and sisters dead just because they black. That's straight up.
I would never march. I would never march.
I wouldn't either.
For nothing. I don't believe in it.
But
you know what? They teach us that in school. They teach you that in school every single year. When they bring up our people, they always bring up the civil rights movement and how they were peaceful and we shall overcome, and they march. And you see people still doing today. Every time something happens, they don't fight, they march. It's been programmed in us to do that.
To Bike's point, let me just say this to Bike for a second. To Bike's point, when he was talking about the fact that Black Wall Street was successful as them being capitalists, for me, the bigger fight is this. If you say the black Americans' economy is into the trillions of dollars, but as far as a dollar staying in the black community for 6 hours, as opposed to being cycled over and over and over again within that community, for me, that's a war itself that we need to win. That, as well as the man in the street, gunning down innocent people. So I agree with what the brothers are saying. I'm just saying that there's another kind of war that's going on, that's being waged, that we should also be winning as well.
Okay, when you mentioned China, you forgot to. Well, when he mentioned China, you forgot to mention that China can be strategically in their approach to the United States because of one reason: they have nuclear weapons. Nobody's going to bum rush China. Okay, having nuclear weapons gives them a way to be strategically calculating economically to fight the United States, because technically they don't have to go to war with the United States. They have economic power.
Yep.
So they also have nuclear weapons, just like North Korea. North Korea don't have anything, but they have nuclear weapons. You don't see nobody trying to bum rush North Korea.
Nobody messing with North Korea.
So using China is really wasn't that good of an analogy, but I get what you're saying. But when you have nuclear weapons, you got say so.
If the United States wanted to wipe North Korea off of the map, they could with the press of a button.
And they could do the same thing to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you know what? That those weapons will be flying through the air and they'll explode because of the might of the United States Army and military. I believe.
You don't know what they can do until they do it. Yeah, you don't know what they can do until they do it. I mean, somebody shoots a missile. That's kind of like shooting a bullet at another one. I mean, good luck. You might hit it. You might not.
What I do know is the United States strategically has the strongest military on the face of this planet in the history of man. If they decide to wipe North Korea off of the map, they could with a press of a button.
No, they tried it a few years ago, and North Korea tested them, and they didn't attack because North Korea had their missiles ready too, and America stood down.
So
they did not want to do that.
Okay, brother. All right.
One mic. So let me say this because I am a veteran. So we do know that back in the 50s, America tried this with the Korean War. And what happened was they had to sign an armistice. Basically, they signed a treaty saying we're not going to fight each other anymore because they couldn't conquer the North Koreans.
Exactly.
So that did happen.
And that was in the 50s.
It was in the 50s, but we do know America had nuclear weapons at the time, and they were perceived to be the stronger military. We also know, if we look at the situation with Russia, I'm a veteran, so I do know that America does have the world's strongest, mightiest military. However, there are certain people America ain't trying to go to war with. Right? The last time America went to war with a superpower, right, it was because they had to, and that's because Hitler was trying to take over the whole world.
Thank you.
Other than that, America only goes to war with countries that they know they can beat. They like
that they can beat.
America's like Floyd Mayweather in his prime. The only one fight you we know he can beat. I'm just being honest. This is how America get down. They only
But I think
that do not have the economic wherewithal, because we know war is a war of attrition. You have to have the industrial power and the economic might, or a huge war chest to finance a war, right? And I think America isn't going to go to war with Russia. America will not go to war with China. That would not happen.
I think you are underestimating the strength of America. I don't think North Korea will be able to stand the military might of America, even China, because China do not have experience of a warfare for the past few decades. America do have.
That's true, but here's the
and then hold on,
because
we do have this conversation. Hold on, we do have this conversation all the time with my lead engineer. He's a Chinese man as well. We have this conversation all the time. He knows that even China will not be able to compete with America, because they don't have the experience. Even some of the military weapons that they haven't tested that. Just like Russia is failing in Ukraine because they underestimated their strength. So I think sometimes we have to be a little technical sometimes.
Right, but here's the other issue I would say about China. China can field an army, a military, the size of the entire American population. America has a population of about 350 million people. China has a population of 1.5 billion. So they can have as many people as we have in the entire country field their military. That's the other thing. The other issue is, because of how the East, if you can't tap back in, I don't know what happened, we lost you. One of the things that we do know is that when countries go to war, particularly if superpowers go to war, they're going to have allies, just like in World War II. When Germany declared war on America and Great Britain, guess what happened? They had Italy and they had Japan on their side. They had the Romanians on their side. They had the Vichy French on their side. They had the Spain on their side. So it ain't going to just be two belligerents going at it. They're going to have as Bush said back in 2004, a coalition of the willing.
But population still doesn't. It's a factor, but it still doesn't rule out the fact that America can be able to compete, or China wouldn't be able to compete with America. Look at the history of China. Even Japan were able to defeat China and colonize them in spite of their population. Right. You understand? So it depends on the weapons they had, the military might they had at that time. That's why they were able to control China for a longer period of time. Even till today, I do meet. I work with Chinese people, and till today, some of them do watch movies on how Japan, a small tiny island, was able to defeat them and rule them for a longer period of time.
Right. Hey, so I'm gonna pass the mic to Brother Dante Kaysen. Let him tap in. I think he's been able to solve his technical issues.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just for the last few minutes, and for a minute now, on the topic of what you're talking about. I guess a couple of things I want to understand. Because you and I've been following you and been working with you and asking a lot of questions here lately because trying to understand, I guess one of you guys brought it up, what does it really mean to be pro-Black? And so that is where I'm lost at, because I've never looked into it or tried to equate myself to say that I am or I'm not pro-Black. What I am is I'm a Black man that I do have standards like everyone else. One of the things that you mentioned, you stated that when you was 21, you did things as 21. And I agree with you on that, because I lived here in Ohio and was raised around the corner from Bakari and his family. And then like right in my 8th grade, 9th grade year, I moved back to Kentucky where I lived at predominantly white. I went to an all white school. You can count the Black people on your hand. And so I ended up being in that position where one of my biggest issues is this. I have 18 brothers and sisters. So for me, it was hard for me to date somebody because I don't know if you my cousin or you my relative. And I have ran into situations where it's almost been that, you try to talk to her, that's your cousin. So I had to basically date outside my race. One thing I do understand is, even at the age now, and even then, I tried to date a white woman. It didn't work for me. And I didn't have to understand that I was pro-Black. I just didn't like it. Too many different attitudes. It just doesn't, it's like really oil and water for me. I just genetically couldn't do it. And at the time, it wasn't about trying to mix and get a different kid. It just didn't work. And then dealing with racism as much as I have, and how that particular species lie, I couldn't put myself in that position or put my family in danger or anything like that. But now that as I'm older, I just realized it just doesn't work. And I don't believe that it has to do with me being pro-Black. I just realized that I can't do it. Because...
So let me ask you this. So you said for you it was oil and water. You said it doesn't work. Why do you think it works for some other people?
I think today and what we live in, and because I think I work in technology. That's my field of expertise. I feel like we do things because it's comfortable. It used to be where you see a Black woman or somebody you liked, it was, do you like me, yes or no? Now is we use this technology piece to hide behind, and you can try to date a Black woman, but then you could try to mess with 15, 16 white women if you want. You feel like you can get away. I think for some of us, it's a conquer game. I think we're just, one of you guys mentioned that we're just out here just doing our thing. We're careless with it. And I think that's the dispensation that we live in now, where everything is just okay to do and it's free for all. It's all right to just do that. And we forget about the principles that we stood on, that we stand on today. Then we'll mention that if it comes down to having a choice or a group, we'll join the popular group or the group that we feel like suits us, because we don't want to be looked down. But then if there's nothing arising or causing things like Black Lives Matter, we'll go back to our norm. And what I see today is the black men that I see and I come across, and I think it's just not I don't think it's my generation, but maybe some. I see that we're just doing it for notches in our belt just to say we did something, or like somebody said, to have a mixed child to just bring in and think that that is okay or the norm for us to have, if that makes sense to you.
No, I get where you're coming from. So let me ask this question, and this would be, of course, to the panel. What about floating? So most people who know me is I have a gregarious personality. So I flirt with everyone, right? But what are your views on flirting with women of other races?
I've done it in occasions before, and I realized that for me, I think it causes issues in some way. I think sometimes a lot of them are just as curious as we are, depending on who the individual is. And if you're not careful, when you do get reeled in, you find out that you basically took on more than what you really did. So I guess my question will go back to you is, why do you do it? Do you do it just to see what it would get, or if they're really curious about us as a black being a black, educated, well-groomed man?
No, for me, I'm like a dog chasing cars. I'm just being honest with you. Like it ain't like, you know, the dog doesn't even know what it's going to do when it catches. Like for me, it wouldn't even go that far. It's just part of my personality. I flirt. But in terms of if going something further, no, that wouldn't happen.
I personally don't see how. Dante, you say you moved back to Kentucky?
Yeah, so I got all my family there, and we moved back, and so I was going to Colonel White in Ohio, and my mother didn't too much care for the educational system that I was getting here, so she sent me to a school that had more books, better educational system, and I went there. Also, I failed like my first semester there and everything based off my learning.
I went to school in Kentucky, man. There's a lot of beautiful women. U of L, shout out to Louisville, and it's a lot of black women. I'm like, man, how you miss all those beautiful black women?
Well, it depends on what part.
So the other issue is this: I lived in a poverty situation, so I was in a predominantly all black, low income area. My mom ended up using my real dad's address for me to go to this particular school up there. Is why I end up doing that. I graduated pretty much in the top of my class, but believe me, it was a whole different walk in that. Not to say that I didn't miss any black women. The other issue is I never traveled. I didn't know what it was like. So going out of state was just either going to Dayton, Ohio or Kentucky. I didn't start traveling until I became a full-fledged adult and graduated college and done some things on my own, rather than just say, hey, I missed the pool. No, I didn't miss the pool. I just wasn't able to get to the pool.
Right.
Okay.
I just think that we just a lot of the guys today, we just do it for fun, just to see what we can do. And then in most cases when they bite, some of us just go with it. Doesn't make it right.
I would never, if I was in the United States, I would never ever flirt with a person who was. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't flirt with no women, because right now it's looking like, I mean, just to look at a woman, they either go into human resources saying that you're harassing them.
Well, let me say this: I've never flirted on a job ever. I've never dipped my pen in company ink. I don't fish off the company pier. I have never ever in my life flirted or dated a woman I worked with. Now, I will say this. There was a time I was on the job and there was a sister. She was gorgeous. And the minute I left that job with somewhere else, I was in her inbox. I'm trying to tell you. I'm like, listen, like, yo, we need to do lunch. You know what I mean? For real. Like that. Now, that happened, but it was after I had already left the job and was somewhere else.
It's messy. And it can be very, very dangerous.
Right. You should never, of course, put a woman above your livelihood. So, yeah.
Hell no.
Yeah, exactly. And then I would like to also hear a woman's perspective of what pro-black means to her too.
So we kind of touched on this at the beginning of the show, and we kind of, took that perspective pro-black, and I Ken Griffied it, right? I knocked it out the park because, as we stated before, unfortunately, it's a nebulous term that means a number of things to what a number of different people. So I don't think you can actually come up with a sound, coherent definition of what the term pro-black means. So we kind of just, we 86 that, and we looked at, of course, from a Black nationalist or Pan-Africanist standpoint.
Makes sense.
Because then, that comes with certain, as Brother Bawana said, that comes with certain qualifiers and expectations of one's behavior. For example, you saw me walking down the street, holding hands with a woman who wasn't Black. You're like, Bakari, what the hell is going on? You got the flu or something? Is this your nurse? You know what I mean? There's going to be some questions that will be asked.
I want to ask a question to each and every one of you on the panel. If you have a misunderstanding with your wife or something like that, and then she kind of reported you to the cops over here in America, would you consider it to be a pro-Black or pro-family oriented or not? I would like some of your perspective on that.
Okay, can you ask that question again?
My question is like, let's say you're married to your wife and you have a misunderstanding and she called the cops on you. Would you consider your wife to be pro-Black?
I think that, so let me answer that. I guess in my perspective, I'm married. I'm actually married to Bakari's sister. I will say this. I think what you do I think it's based off the establishment of how you got set up your house. I don't think that you can define that to say that your spouse is pro-Black or pro for you, because one of the things that I do understand is what is the term of her having to call. So if you did something that's out of line and it's not right, that another Black man would say, hey, Black man, or hey, brother, that was wrong, or we feel like it is. Like, I've been to prison. So the one thing I've understood is this: you can go to prison for anything but two things, women and children. And so when you cross that barrier, I really can't say that, your wife is or isn't pro-Black. Now, if you're dealing with somebody that just calls just because or whatever, then I don't think that that's an issue of her being pro-Black. I think that's an issue of your relationship, and she's got a trump card on you, or your relationship is just not right. And maybe you need to sit back and reevaluate your thoughts on this, because if that's the case, chances are you or her got with each other based off look principle and never even crossed the threshold of trying to see. At the age that I am now, I come to the conclusion that I don't date off looks anymore. I date off character, attitude, and integrity.
Yes, sir.
More stuff than internet, because I'm pretty sure we all done rolled past in anybody's neighborhood and seen a bad Cutlass sitting in the driveway with no motor, but it looks real good. You know what I mean? And it's an empty shell, and that's what the women are today. They're built like that, but they got no motors in them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think that if a woman was to do that to me, understanding what the situation is in the United States, it's like, man, you are inviting a situation into our relationship that could be a death situation. I mean, and you should know better. So I think that it depends on what I've done now.
They do know better.
If
I agree with that.
Yeah, if she's in fear for her life, that's a different. And she sincerely means that, I would understand why she'd want to use the police. But if she is using the police as a trump card, understanding that any interaction with a police officer could mean my death, I think that I would have to sit down, as brother-in-law says, and really question the relationship.
But Bakari said something very interesting, and I had to agree with that. And honestly, I never thought about it that way. We have so long been programmed and been dating because the rules change. And let me go back and say this. Before I got married to his sister, I was married before in the previous marriage. When I got out, the world had changed because I was so committed to something that I let things pass me by. Now I'm married again, and so I'm comfortable here. But if we were all to separate from our spouse, the world will change again, because so much stuff has passed by. The dating game has changed. So now the living aspect today is you try it before you buy it. You don't have to work through to get it. I say that to say this. Bakari said that you got to be what I want before we even get engaged with this. And I think that now we don't go into relationships or even come into a woman with that aspect. We'll sit here and work things to say, if she is not what I really recommend or what I want, we'll make an adjustment to try to say, well, it is still fit for me. And I think that's the bad thing that we all do is we compromise, and compromising is what costs us. So when you go back and say, well, it's a detriment to you and your family, of course it is, because you compromise with that chick. You should have already knew that she was that type way before that, because you chose wrong. You knew that she wasn't for you, but you went on and went with it anyway because she was a fixer-upper. Or maybe you were.
To just veggie back on Don, my brother-in-law's point, is that when I come across a lot of women, they're like, okay, you're well put together, you're well read, you're well spoken, da 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 da. But they say, you're very different, because I've had women tell me this: you expect more out of me than a pretty face and a big butt and a smile. And I expect much more than that. That doesn't do anything for me. You've been there, done that. I tell people all the time, I've had enough sex for 2 lifetimes, literally. Part of it's because I'm fine as hell. But listen, we're not gonna get into that. That's a conversation for another day. But seriously though, you got to bring a lot more to the table than just you look good.
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
Like when you go to the empty shell, I've had other brothers, particularly I have some mentors who are 20-something years older than me, say the same thing. It's going to be an empty vessel at the end of the day if there's not something more there.
I will extend on what you guys said as far as like I know, like I said, I know that black women know the cops, and you got certain black women that will use that to their advantage on a black man, knowing that the type of trouble they'll get in for it. Also, even when it comes to black men's children, I won't consider a black woman pro-black if she has a child with a man and he's taking care of him and she still puts him on child support. I don't agree with that. But we know black women do that to black men that are actually good fathers to their children and actually financially take care of their children. But because she's mad at him or something, she'll put him on child support, which kind of indirectly puts him in the process of being in the system to be put in jail. You know what I'm saying? So that's something too.
I got a quick question. And based off of what I'm hearing, and this is my question. Based what the cops being called on a man is she's pro-black. So my question would be based off of that: are black men inherently pro-black?
That has to be the question. That has to be done in the house, I believe, because as you guys were saying earlier, you based off the model that I'm understanding is it was Pan-Africanism. So beyond that, I have no clue. Only thing I know is I'm a good black man in my house. Right. And so with that being said, is that brother or that particular brother in that situation that guy? And so you got to put yourself in that position and say, are you that? So Mr. Nate, are you that guy? And what will happen to you if it comes across your way? What are your thoughts about it?
Well, because I espouse to a Pan-African pro-black ideology, I wouldn't personally get a woman such that she would have an ideology to want to call the cops on me simply for a simple disagreement. Now, if I
very quickly, in my years of experience, irrespective of what a woman's values are, her feelings at any moment can take control, and she would do something that is in contravention of what she states she believes in. This is just my experience.
100%. That is true for a lot of women.
And I think that would be a conscious behavior for them to do it, because that's what they've done to the guys before that we probably dated them before. So it's probably been a history of that. And in most cases, that's probably what it was. It was a history of that, or that has what they've been known to see in their house.
Yeah, like I said,
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
yeah, it's what Brother Lumumba said. Women can change depending on their feelings. Yeah, that can happen. I mean, that can happen with people in general. But I guess generally speaking, I would try to seek for a woman that would embody the same ideologies as me. Yes, there can be situations where uh, she can veer off the path, same as me. But you going with the general hope that this person would maintain the same ideology as you. So, given that the case, yeah, I wouldn't actively go after a woman that I know can possibly, if we was to do it percentage wise, they have a higher percentage of calling the cops on me for a simple disagreement.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Because the reason why I asked that question is that, I mean, as someone coming from Ghana, West Africa, we don't act that way. I know, like, that we have police and everything over there, but from a cultural perspective, generally, when there's a misunderstanding, and I wasn't asking the question as if, like, oh, I inflicted harm on the lady or something like that. It was just a normal misunderstanding, and then she trying to call the cops and trying to tell me to leave. Generally, from the culture where I come from, you have to call maybe the parent, and then you gotta talk through first. The extreme case you want to go is to call the cops. I don't think the marriage is gonna survive if you go to the cops. They're not gonna
I don't,
see you
in
as,
most cases, they don't.
yeah.
You tend to end up with somebody, whether that be you or her, or at that point you're living in fear, because once it happens the first time, it's you've already either one, you're trying to make a way of escape, or you mentally checked out. You're just there physically, and I think that um, we cross the lines of saying that, hey, I forgive you and this and that, but at the end of the day, you don't, because now uh, I become weaponized. I every time I say something, or I will struggle saying how I feel, because if I tell you how I feel, you're either going to demoralize how I feel, or because you're not listening to me and I'm trying to be stern, you're going to consider that as yelling or being a boisterous, and you're going to always call them on me anyway. So um, I think that sometimes we get out of pocket of not asking questions, or we ask things that the common questions to paint a picture. And they say a picture is 1,000 words, but a lot of them can be lies. So sometimes I don't think we ask the important questions. Like a common conversation is just, hey, you ever called the cops on a guy before, and why? We don't ask that stuff. And then the questions that we asking in here now, probably 80% of them probably never been asked to women. It's just been, what are you doing free before 11? Do you smoke or drink? Can we go? Uh, who's your favorite football team? It better not be the Steelers, so we gonna fight. Just stuff like that.
Hold up, wait, what?
I'm just saying, that's just what it is.
No,
And
what is
so,
it with you? Hold on. What, you a Bengals fan?
no, I'm no fan. I don't watch. I'm a UK.
Oh, okay. You said
I just watch UK basketball. I don't watch any NFL
okay.
stuff, because none of us get paid, and some of us.
Why you call out Pittsburgh?
I'm just giving an example. I could have said any team, but nevertheless.
Oh man, you picked mine. I'm like, hold on.
It's just that, and so you got to be mindful of the other stuff that you forget. And now that I'm an adult, half of the questions that we talk about now, I would have never asked in my 20s and late 20s. No, I'm just trying to see what you got, a thong on, boxers or briefs. That was my whole. Just being honest, this stuff now.
Yeah, you right.
Yeah, and so now we can ask those questions. One, have us. I know me. Heck, we don't have probably more sex than that Tonka on made toys. Who knows? But you don't want that anymore. You want something tangible now. Conversation is tangible. And when
Right.
everything else falls and breaks down, you still have that. Half of us probably been with a spouse so long and don't even know how to have a conversation with them because you never engage with them. She's been cute the whole time y'all been together. Now that she ain't,
Damn.
you got to go find somebody else.
You right.
That's what it is. So, you know, you just got to just like be mindful of start asking stuff. It's funny because Bakari and his sister are just alike. They're so logical, and my wife, she questions me and she asks me stuff, and then I literally have to sit down with her sometime and be like, "Hey, wait, okay, let me think about that," because she thinks like she works. She's a government worker, but she thinks so high level, and both of them are like that. I'm very intellectual on another type of manner, and so I clash with her sometimes just with all the questions that she asked me, and if it don't sound right, she gonna keep asking you.
Yeah, and I can say this from personal experience because she's my older sister. She could be intimidating, particularly intellectually.
Yes.
Right? And so, of course, part of it was because she had 6 years on me growing up. But I can recall being in spaces with her, like, damn, like, you shut everybody down. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, damn, like, you know what I'm saying? You doing it like that? So,
yeah.
So,
and it's like I don't worry about having to have anybody come into my house with the extra stuff because we handle it here. And here's the thing, we never conversated about that, but I knew what I was getting because I knew the stock that she came from, because his house, anything that went wrong, if they leaked it out, is how it got out, because nobody would have never knew what was going on in their household. And that was just by osmosis. It was just like that. We don't live like that today. Facebook know our information, Instagram know our information, Snapchat get it for an hour till it disappears. And it's just like we publicize it.
And if I could veg you back on that, because I remember there's a situation, we have a cousin was putting her personal business out, and Naomi and I both DM'd her like, what are you doing? No one needs to know this.
Yeah.
Why are you putting your personal information out? Typically, people who are what we would say reserved, right? We only put positive things out on social media. Hey, I had a PR at the gym. I got a promotion. Hey, I went on this vacation. Look at us with skydiving.
Right.
So rather innocuous things, right? But, you know, there's a thing in sociology they call the front porch and the back porch politics, right? The front porch is certain things you allow for what? The rest of society in the world to know. That back porch is what you don't want people knowing about, right? Your family and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's something nowadays. You're absolutely right.
And it's ironic that you say that, because in the line of work that I do, before I hire you, ironically, I have to check your Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. And I have the technology to hack that. And so with that being said, I have to know who you're talking to, because before they bring you on, if you out there with their paraphernalia on, just walking around and doing stupid stuff. I have a kid myself, one of my sons, who smokes weed, but he works for Amazon. But he's at home with his Amazon clothes on Facebook Live, smoking a blunt. And I'm like, dude, you can't do that, because if somebody feel froggy, they'll tell on you. Now, on the opposite of that, I got friends that are on Facebook. One particular girl, she dates, I think she's a serial monogamous, because every other week she got a new dude they in love, and then when he makes her mad, she puts it all on Facebook, and it's, girl, let me tell you about this dude, let me tell you about that dude. And it's like, if you really want to date a chick now, just go on her Facebook page and see if she's messy.
Yeah, that's true. I heard that a lot. Yeah,
they'll put it out there, man. And that's why I say technology has weakened us. You know, we have all these facets now that we can put stuff out. They put your business out, and then ain't no more secrecy at home. Like, hey, we had a misunderstanding. I apologize. Let's fix it. No, I'm going, as soon as I argue with you, as soon as you walk out, I'm getting on live and I'm telling everybody he weak, he a punk. I put his stuff out. Y'all look, there's the wash machine and everything I don't throw out in the yard.
Yep.
I watch him come and get that, because we don't have no morals. And then as men, we allow it. As long as it ain't happening to us, we cool with it. But nobody won't go say to that other person.
Yeah, I've seen black women get backlash for doing that to black men. I know, Bakari, we talked about this before a few weeks ago. Remember the girl that had the 4 kids and the one was hungry and the actual dad brought the food for the one child and she tried to put him on social media for trying to act like he didn't bring food for all the kids, even though it wasn't his job to bring food for all the kids because he only had one with her. And they got on her about that. And she made a second video trying to defend it, which you can't defend that. Everybody was right. You can't. But these women have an issue with always putting their business out there. And for one, nobody's gonna care about it for real. Most people are gonna see it as entertainment. Nobody's gonna go to sleep thinking about your issues or problems anyway. So I don't understand why most people even put their issues on Facebook or social media, because the majority of people that's seeing it don't really care. But it's just entertainment to them. It's the norm, and that's the thing. Nobody is checking it. You're right. It's normal, but it's not. It's just weird that they won't stop doing it. It's like they get the attention out of it, the gratification of attention. They don't care about if it's shameful or not, or if everybody knows their business. They just want the attention. They will take any type of attention, good or bad, embarrassing, grateful, shameful. That's just what they react off of. That's what social media has done to so many women. That's why most women can't be satisfied with being with one man, because they're used to being attached to multiple men and having men in their DMs all day, every day. They can't handle it.
Some of the other people tap in before we close out. Brother Nate, Brother Zongo, Brother Bag.
I want to say something right fast. And I know you guys mentioned the technology are driving a lot of the social issues. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I think that just me, man. I think that it's possible that maybe the technology only exacerbate what was already there. I mean, due to
I would agree.
Already broken culture. That's the only thing I think that technology only exacerbates or extend, a precondition.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Bag, what are your thoughts?
Well, for me personally, I would never get married and have kids in America. These women just are not worth it. I mean, most of them do not know how to cook, do not know how to clean, do not know how to garden. Okay, how do you deal with a woman like that? I would never date a woman that cursed me. I wouldn't be in a relationship like that. If you can't communicate with me and take the time to express yourself, then you have no self-respect and you have no respect for me. So I can't do that. So as far as women in America, I'm not going to say black women or what, just women. It just seems like across the board, they're just wild and they have no respect. How do you deal with a person like that? You can't build with a person like that. After a certain point in your time, at my age, I'm 52, I've already built for myself. I'm not going to risk going into a divorce where I know the system's geared towards the woman and lose everything I work for.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm in a situation where I can't gamble like that. And it may sound selfish and I may be considered a dog, but it's about self-preservation.
Trust me. I've been divorced. I know.
Because think about this.
Common sense.
I wish we had some sisters to tap in on the conversation, but none showed up tonight. But I appreciate your perspective and your point. I understand where you're coming from 1,000%. 1,000%.
Well, it's so bad that on my job, you have insurance, medical insurance. But basically what it is preventive maintenance if you're single and insurance for your family. Because if I need insurance, if I have to have surgery, if I don't work so many hours in a month, I lose my insurance.
What?
Yeah, that's how a lot of these companies are.
Right?
Excuse me?
Because you're in California, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But the company's out of California. But a lot of companies are going like that to where you have to work so many hours in a month to keep the insurance. Don't get me wrong, it's excellent insurance. But the thing is for as long as I'm working and I'm healthy, I can get preventive checkups and things like that, screens. But if I have to have it, being single, you're going to have to go on Cobra. and that's expensive, or get a supplemental insurance.
Mm.
You know, so I don't see how people are dealing with marriage, and if it don't work out, trying to rebuild your life after 40, you're really screwed.
So right
They're
fast, do you think
screwed.
that's a system issue? Do you think that's a system issue rather than an issue dealing with women?
Well,
It's both,
that's a
'cause women use it
that's
to-
a system issue, but you got to be careful when dealing with a woman. If you allow yourself to get a baby, you know, I mean, that's a totally different dynamic in itself.
So is
You
the
know, that's
system
why I never got married or have kids.
Let me ask this question to the group. Have any of you ever had a woman come to you and they request of you or ask that you simply impregnate them, that you don't have to be in a relationship, you don't have to be with them, you don't have to be a father to the child, that the woman has simply come to you and asked you, get me pregnant? Have you ever had that happen to you?
I have.
Yes, and I cut that bitch
No.
off.
All right. Well, listen, we don't want to use the B word on the
Oh, my
channel.
bad. I just took offense to it when she said it. I was talking to her, and we were, you know, with each other, and she had said something like, she said, you know, I always want to have a baby. If I ever got pregnant by you, you know, you wouldn't need to be in the child's life. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I've heard women, you know, talk about wanting to be a single mom, but to personally experience it with a woman I was dealing with, I had to cut her off because I couldn't. There's no way, first off, as a man, I'm going to have a child in this world and not want to be a part of his life or take care of it. But to have the mother tell me that you don't want me in the child's life, I can't mess with you at all, because you're denying me my child and you're denying that child a father. And you have women that think like that, and that's a crazy mindset to have. But with the way that the culture is, and once again, how single motherhood is glorified, they get something out of being a single mom or something like that. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. It's detrimental to the black community and them on a personal level, and even more importantly, the child. But when you know that a woman is out there just to get pregnant and she presents that to you, I will warn all you brothers, distance yourself from that woman, cut that woman off, because they are out here. They are out here. You got women that's going towards the 30s that are hitting the wall, or they can't get a man, and they will try to get a baby out of anybody that will give them one. And if you got their child, you're screwed through child support.
I wouldn't even want to let y'all see some of my check stubs that I've paid. I've paid up to at least $1,700 a month in child support. Now that all my kids are grown, I still pay rearage. When I got out of prison in 2008, I was $67,000 in the hole. And I started working at McDonald's. And I was making $28 every 2 weeks.
Damn.
And then my kids' parents got in cahoots and dropped my kids off in the summer of 2008. And I had to raise my 4 boys. I was still paying the child support, and they were giving me the card of the child support to use to help me take care of my kids. And actually, one of them still haven't dropped the rearage. I've still been paying it, and I've been blessed because I have the ability to work. And I tell any man, while I get child support is a danger and it's not really good for us, if you get put on it, just pay it and just let it ride unless you feel like you should fight it. Or if she's not a good mother, get your kid. Mm-hmm. I encourage. Yeah, because at the end of the day, we already have enough fight with being in the system. What I have learned in being in this is I don't have to deal with them if I pay it, because they don't have to call me or anything like that. I just got to worry about that.
Right.
I turn my in when I get a job, and I'm at the point now where how I live now, I don't even worry about it, because I make so much money now that when they take it, it's like taxes to me. Where at one time, I was stressed, but I learned to just keep pressing on, keep educating myself, keep doing what I should do, keep being a father. And it worked out for me in the end. It may not work out for everybody, but that process has worked for me. And it's tough, but I struggle. My son that Naomi has, which is my stepson, I recall his dad come over and he argued with my wife about a $50 a month child support payment. Told her that it will help. It'll help him if she take him off this $50 a month, and he can do more for his kid. And so I was so frustrated with the man that I wanted to fight him, but I realized, like, no, I'm gonna do something better. So I brought him my check stubs. Like, how are you sitting here crying about $50, man? Do you see what I'm taking?
Yeah,
and I'm still taking care of a house. You know, hey, this ain't gonna work, bro. Like,
50 ain't nothing but a phone, a cell phone bill. Like, that ain't nothing. Because
I've 12 and a half
before. So
it was $12.50 a week is what he had to pay, man. $12.50 a week, and he cried about it. And
right.
That's not. Come on, bro. Like that to me. Now, when I see arguments and I hear stuff like that, I get frustrated because I feel like, no, man. Now, I know what the consensus is, we argue because sometimes you got the mothers out there that don't use that money for the right reason. I get that. I do make sure that I pay it. I still try to make some money.
Real quick, when you mentioned that, so I don't watch the show, but I saw a clip on that show, The Talk, where they actually had it's nothing but women on the show, and they actually had a question on the show where they asked the people at the table, the women in the audience, is it okay to take the child support money and spend it on yourself every now and then? This was the actual topic of discussion.
No.
Hey guys, I gotta check out now. I think it was a wonderful conversation. Interesting to speak about it. See you next time. But I wanted to say one thing though. I think a lot of Black women, they're missing out. I mean, like I said, I came from Africa, been here for almost 2.5 years now, working an engineering job. I met an African American lady. I was into like pro-Black thing, but when she trying to call the cops on me, I'm like, damn, and now I'm sitting down thinking like, man, we could have just made it like together, like Black people, like where I go to work, you see like other races like making it big, and we could also be the same Black couple, you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
Most of the women are used to that. Most of the women today are not used to that principle. They're not.
Well, and let me say this. I think for some of
they were told.
I think for some of our people. So real quick, let me try to give some background. Frantz Fanon, we know who Frantz Fanon was, the Martinique-born psychiatrist who wrote a litany of books on the African psychological condition coming out of colonialism. And one of the things he talked about when he was participating and helping with the Algerian Revolution was that he noticed that many of the Algerian freedom fighters, pain had become an aphrodisiac, right? I would argue that for many of our people, dysfunctionalism has become an aphrodisiac.
They don't function better in that.
If there is not some type of drama going on,
they don't want it.
Many of our people don't know. It's unsettling for them. And I bring this up because we know that, unfortunately, maybe not our generation, but younger generations, they have this fantastical infatuation with reality TV shows. And what we know is what? Reality TV shows promote 3 principles. Unless you're watching Flip That House, you're going to have dysfunctional behavior, hypersexuality, and violence. Right? This is the reality. Right? And so I think part of what has taken place, especially with the younger generation, the Y2K babies, right? And then afterwards, is that this whole concept of dysfunctionalism has become a norm. It's become marketed, right? And it's saturated the airwaves to where if these type of things isn't going on, if this type of behavior isn't taking place, they don't know how to respond or how to react.
They consider you boring. They literally will consider you boring because they don't know how to live in peace. It behooves them to want to do that because you're not messy. In fact, I've even been told that some women, if you don't hit a woman, you're not considered a man because they're dysfunctional like that. They need a dude to put their hands on them because they don't know how to. And I say that to say, man, it's not the fact that they missing out on something good. They don't know what good is.
I'll give you an example. We also saw the movie Love Jones.
Yeah.
Right. And so there was a scene where Lorenz Tate's character was dealing with Nia Long in a cherry thong with the lights on, right? And so Nia Long, they were in Chicago and she was looking to go back to New York and take part in trying to get her photography career jumping off. And her girlfriend said, well, girl, tell him that you're going to go to New York and be staying with this other guy. And if he gets mad, that means that he cares about you. But if he doesn't get mad, then go ahead. Go. This was the advice her girlfriend gave her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's oftentimes, unfortunately, this is starting to become a manosphere conversation, but with modern women, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right? If you become upset, you can't control yourself, I'm afraid. If you're regal and you're composed and you have self-control, it means he doesn't care. So I'm going. So you're in a situation to where, like you said, Brother Dante, it really comes down to you have to really find out about the values of the person. For example, my daughter's 12 years old. So 12 years old, Lord have mercy, right? She's about to be a teenager. But I had conversations with her like, listen, if you want to get to know someone, you like some boy, you have to watch them and see how do they actually handle real life, real world situations. Because some people got a good mouthpiece and they can say the right things.
But can't do it.
Correct.
But you have to observe their behavior and watch them. And then watch them and watch them and see how do they actually comport themselves in their daily life.
Yep.
I agree with you on that. I do. I do believe the world we do live in, especially today, and it's everywhere, that I think dysfunction is the norm now. There is no such thing as a balanced life unless you establish that in your house already, or you're a baby boomer in some sense. There is no value to that. And so the plethora of women that you have here, and even in some of the older women, because they feel like they can't get a guy their age, they result themselves to going back trying to date younger men or somebody that's chaotic just to feel needed. And so they will adjust themselves to be petty like that too, to get that. So all in all, it just boils down to one, you gotta know what you want before they get there. And you gotta express that, and you can't compromise. I think compromising is like old water. It becomes poisonous. I mean, it tastes good going down, but after a while you realize it's not good for you. And so I think that you have to realize, like, I'm dealing with people that are stale out here that don't really want to be refreshed or want something new. They don't. New is not a thing. If you don't have drama and you're not on all the platforms and you're not causing problems and it's not free before 11, they don't want you.
And any final thoughts, Brother Bag, Brother Nate?
The only thing I can say is I may be alone, but I'm never lonely.
Got you. Well,
I know that's right.
He said that the only thing worse than being alone is wishing you were.
Yeah, interesting.
That's true, bro.
Yeah, my final thoughts is that, and I hear what everyone is saying, and it is true. I mean, the dating field is like a landmine out there. I mean, it is rough, but I think that for as Pan-Africanism, Black liberation, I think that once we begin to end the oppression, I believe that we also can fix the social issues, because I think many of the social issues come from out of oppression, and that's just what I
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Could you give an example of a social issue that you think comes from?
Well, we are talking about child support. I mean, child support is stemming from the oppression of government institutions that are not owned and controlled by Black people. These are outside institutions. And so I think these things have caused issues. They have infiltrated themselves, the mechanisms have infiltrated into our lives.
Okay. I'm going to play devil's advocate real quick.
Yeah.
Black people are the only people who pay child support.
Well, also Black people are also largely affected due to systemic racism, where they're not able to obtain the capital to be able to pay large sums of child support also. So we're still running into many systemic and oppressive issues.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate again. So if a person isn't making enough money to pay child support, then that means the person basically wouldn't be making enough money to take care of their children anyway. So why is a person who can't financially support their children having them?
Well, under the Geneva Convention, that would be considered also genocide. I mean, if you put a person into a situation where they're not able to fulfill their biological needs, that means reproduction of that particular group, or a destruction of that particular group's culture, that would be filed under genocide.
So with that, what does that go down to choice though? I when it comes
But the
to
thing
that,
is, if you choose not to have a kid based off of you don't have the money, and I understand the need to do so. That's not I totally understand that. But what the thing is that why we're in the situation where we have to make those choices.
because sometimes we're not ready for that.
Well, the thing is that why
just to say there are people of other racial ethnic groups as well who say, hey, I'm not going to have children until I can financially afford to have them.
Okay, but the thing is that largely we don't own or control the economic landscape in our communities. To if we do make that decision, we have no institutions to support a person that don't have the ability to take care of children or whatnot. I mean, I mean, it comes down to people having the ability to do so, and if that is hindered, I think that is, part of oppression.
But let me ask you this then, since you're saying that.
We're going to do a show on this.
So how does that change down with the idea that, I mean, people are just having these kids for financial reasons, not necessarily, hey, I don't have the money to do it. You got,
but where these financial means are coming from?
Of course, government and taxpayers.
The government.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that has to be the biggest issue right there.
Right.
As
so we have to break the culture of saying that there's another way of doing this. The institution of, hey, if you're gonna have a kid, be ready for it. Not have a kid and then you struggle, but then I need to go get me another check because my 36 months is up and I'm gonna go have me another kid.
Right. I think, and I understand what you're saying. The practices is harmful, but the thing is that again, when these things are created, when environments and situations are created and their causes different outcome, we have to look at to the ones who create it. I mean, because it comes into the same thing. I've always heard that, Black people have a crab in the bucket mentality. But my question is, we need to deal with the ones who put them in a bucket, because crabs don't belong in buckets. So, I get the sentiment, making personal choices, yes, because I don't go out there and screw my life up like that, But however, doesn't mean that the mechanisms are not into play. I mean, people fall into these situations. I mean, that just, I guess I'm just looking at.
What do you mean by people fall into the situation?
Well, I mean, like we're talking about child support. People fall prey to that. I don't think no one wakes up in the morning and decide they want to be on child support.
Okay.
I mean, what was life like before child support?
Well, I would argue, and I've made this argument, like we have to actually do a show on this whole child support issue, because I've made the argument that I think in some cases, child support has incentivized women not be having families, not being with the man, because they get the financial support without having,
okay, so then if that's the case,
male leadership. But
right, and just right fast to add to that, and I 100% agree.
I was gonna say real quick.
Yeah, go for it, bro.
I was going to say real quick, there was a time when child support was just for married couples. They changed it when single motherhood became more prevalent, which more incentivized them to put more men on child support. There was a time when if you weren't married, you didn't get child, and you went through, unless you got married and went through a divorce, you didn't get child support. If you were just a single mom and you wasn't married to the man that you had those children with, you did not get child support. So once they changed it over, it became even more incentivized for single mothers or women who weren't marrying men that's out here having children willy-nilly to get that extra support from the system. And once again, excommunicating the father out of the child's life.
So with that being the case, and I totally agree with you, then we have to see that due to the power differential, those that are able to give rewards and punishment, obviously due to power differential, we can see that institution is creating behavior.
The thing is, at the end of the day, you still, as a grown adult, have a choice to not do it. When it comes to having kids with certain people and everything, you're still responsible for your own actions and yourself in general. I'm not about to go out here and see a woman that got 3 kids by 3 different dudes and say, I want to be baby daddy number 4, knowing that she got the other 3 men on child support. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't do that. So we still have a responsibility to ourselves. I know the game. And I know a lot of y'all know the game. And these women know the game too. So at the end of the day, once again, we know what's out there and these consequences. We all know ahead of a time. So I know there are certain situations where men can fall into it due to certain circumstances, but in the general, most of these men and most of these women are out here just having casual sex and ended up with these babies, and then the woman is choosing to put them in on child support. And that still falls into your own personal actions. That's straight up.
I don't think,
I don't have no kids. And the reason is because I knew better. My dad told me when I was 6, 7 years old about child support. And that stuck with me all my life, even now with me at 30. So it's like me taking that chance. I agree with the other brother that said he's 52 and would never get married and have kids because of the consequences that come with it. It ain't worth it.
Right. I mean, I understand. I totally understand what you're saying. You're right. It just, when framing the conversation, I don't want it to look like that we're just only targeting, women or just people just going out here willy-nilly as the cause of it. I get that happens, and yes, and it wreaks havoc on the community, but again, this stuff is incentivized.
Yeah, but the
cause
it's incentivized, but you're
I'm sorry.
It's incentivized, but you're like putting more responsibility on the system versus the people that are actually committing the situation to happen in the first place. If you are a man that doesn't have no kids, you ain't got to worry about it at all. You know what I'm saying? If you're a woman, and these, like I said,
only reason why I put emphasis on the system is because of the power differential. The system have immense power where they can reward and punish behavior. So when you have that ability due to the power differential, you can shape behavior. This has been proven throughout.
Yeah, but some of that behavior is not always negative. Like, okay, I know about the child support system and I don't have any kids. Why? Because I know about the child support system. Even if I know I'm a good man and I was going to take care of my children, there's still a chance that this woman, if she wanted to, without my control, could still put me on child support. Me knowing about the system and knowing the consequences of it keeps me from having children, keeps me from getting married. And those same guys that are just like me that know about it can still make that choice to not go out here and just have casual sex with women and have children that they know with the wrong woman or screw their life up by putting them on child support.
But I think due to the fact that you're deciding not to have children, not to get married, due to these issues, I think it's an issue in and of itself. Is that's also being shaped also. That's part of genocide.
I just think
we're in systems that we don't control. I mean, we're under systems that we don't control at all. So I think that has to be looked at. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Oh, hey, we're gonna do a show on it. Don't worry, we're gonna do a show on this because this is a great topic. And I agree with what Brother Malcolm said. Like, you don't go out and try to get into a relationship with a woman who got 3 kids by 3 different men. They're all on child support. But however, I was in a situation in which I was married. We were married before we had my son. I come home from work one day, I'm leaving the Beaver, I got on a polo shirt and slacks, and she says, hey, you know what? I don't want to be married anymore.
Right.
Got you.
So the same thing happened to my best friend. They were together 15 years, married for 6. They had twins. He's making 6 figures. He comes home from work one day and she says, you know what? I'm tired of this family life thing. I want to be single. I'm moving to Miami. Literally happened. And I had known this young lady
and they will,
for years. Like, wow, she's like that. She lived with your parents in the home, and while you was over in Afghanistan fighting in the war, and she pulls a stunt like this. And next thing you know, he's shoulder deep in child support. Man, I don't even have.
And brother Malcolm.
So these type of things, and that's why. And I get what Brother Nate is saying, because it's still shaping behavior. Because now brothers are like, I see these horror stories and they're apprehensive. I even saw an episode on Kevin Samuel's show where this woman called in. She said she had 3 children by her ex-husband. She had filed for divorce. And she said, my ex-husband was a great father and a great husband, but I divorced him because I thought I could meet someone who made more money. And she admitted that she's struggling as a single mother. But Kevin Samuel's like, well, what about him? He's the one paying a shitload of child support every month, and he can't even raise his own children.
Right.
He did nothing wrong. And so one of the biggest game changers in this whole situation that I'm going to pass it about a bag is what? When they instituted no-fault divorce, to where you could just leave someone for basically no reason at all, and you pay no penalty, that changed the game.
And just right fast, I just want to say, Brother Malcolm, I totally understand what you're saying, bro. I understand the frustration. You know, I don't want you to take it that I'm not hearing what you're saying, because I totally do. I feel your pain.
Oh no, I actually let your point set in too. Like when you said that me knowing the consequences does commit to genocide, that does affect me not wanting to get married and have children. You're right. In a perfect world, if that stuff didn't exist, I would be more inclined to want to get married and have children. So you do have a point on that. Because me knowing these things does keep me wanting to do those actions.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Those things implemented would like if stuff like that, if I knew me as a good man could have children and take care of my kids and know that a woman couldn't put me on child support, I would work into having kids, but we know it's not that way. Even if you're a good father and still take care of your children, the woman can still put you on child support. So in a way, you do have a point.
Right.
I just never thought about it.
Brother Bag, I'm gonna let you close this out.
Well, when you listen to what you're saying, it's interesting, because when you get my age at 52, you have women that have babies in their 40s. So how are you going to be in a relationship with someone with a kid at that age? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's very young, and it's prevalent. It's becoming normal, because they've out here and having fun, and you know, when they get divorced, they go get another man, and then they have another baby, and then what? You're supposed to take care of them? I mean, it is getting to the point where I thank God that I just focused on my goals. I thought if I worked, maybe one day I'd have something to offer somebody, but it never came. I was smart enough to see what was going on and not partake in it. And it's not that I'm some holier than thou, because no, I struggled to get to where I am. I had to learn. I didn't come from an academic background or anything like that. It was like school of hard knocks, but I was always willing to learn and better myself. You know, like I'm listening to you, Professor Lumumba, or being on Dynasty. I try to surround myself with intelligent people that, you know, that have something to say. These people out here aren't they're not on that. They're not with that. And for you as a guy that has his life together, trying to deal with these women, you're just, man, you're butting your head up against a brick wall. I mean, I'm a strong individual, but I feel sorry for anybody that don't have my mindset when it comes to life, because I'm still positive. I'm not negative. I don't disrespect people, but I peep what's going on, and it's scary as far as our race, because there's a difference in people, but as far as the black race in this country, it's literally a wash. These kids are so out of control that are out here. I mean, you can't discipline them. You can't touch them. you say anything, they go to school and say something, you got child support or CPS at your door. I mean, it's hell being a man that's got his crap together. We're not talking about Pookie and Ray Ray. We're talking about men that have their crap together. I mean, good luck. That's all I can say.
And I would say this, because I had a situation once where I was at my daughter's school, and my daughter ironically was acting in contravention of the values of the Lumumba household. And so I got on her about it, and the principal called the police on me.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know, right? So I remember it was the day of the lunar eclipse. So I was mad. I got missed the eclipse and shit. I was pissed off. I remember. So anyway, I get arrested. I go to jail. I bond out the same day. And so we had to go to court. But see, I knew the law. And I knew by law in Ohio, you have a legal right to use corporal punishment based on a number of factors: the child's age, the child's response to non-corporal punishment, and then the severity of the corporal punishment. Now, the ironic thing was I hadn't even used any corporal punishment. I just told the principal, hey, I'm going to sign her out, take her home, bring her back. So long story short, I actually went to trial, and the principal was on the stand like, I didn't know who he was. He just showed up, grabbed his daughter, and tried to run off. And so my lawyer was like, really? That's not what you said here in this police report on the day in question. How about you read to the jury what you said? So, of course, in the police report, she stated, yes, Mr. Lumumba identified who he was. I checked him through the system, saw that he was the father. The court order was on file. We had a conversation about the child's behavior. Then he said he was going to sign him out. So my lawyer was like, well, are you lying then or are you lying now? Which one is it? Right? And so, of course, I ended up being acquitted. But once again, it goes with the fact that I even had to deal with that, even the fact that my livelihood and my career was even in jeopardy. In fact, I went to trial a week before I had an interview to get into my doctoral program at Ohio State. That's how high stakes the situation was. 1 week before my interview to get into my PhD program, I had to go to trial.
Man, I'm sorry to hear that. That's trying to mess up a good brother right there.
Yeah, and it was wild. And of course I was acquitted. But the fact that this principal, who was a white woman, I remember she was like, well, I called the police because the child looked afraid. And so my lawyer was like, how long have you been working in secondary education? 18 years. Isn't it normal for a child to look scared when they know that they're in trouble?
Hey, yes. Father or mother come, because they know you're the disciplinary. Yeah.
Right. So they was like, well, so why did you call the police? Well, he's pretty big. Oh, so you're saying that because his physique made you? So it was wild. So then I get up on the stand, and the prosecutor tried to like law and order me. He was trying to like rile me up and stuff. He's like, so what you're saying is da 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 da. And I was like, no, that's not what I said. What I stated was, I said any parent knows that it is paramount that anytime your child seeks to usurp your authority, you immediately reestablish your authority. Doesn't matter if you're at a church, synagogue, mosque, museum, shopping mall, school, playground. Everyone knows that. So then my daughter got on the stand and was like, well, my dad he was upset when we was going to sign me out because I was misbehaving. So my attorney was like, so Z, how would your mother have responded if you was acting that way? She said, my mom would have gave me a whooping. So my lawyer was like, are you saying that your father reacted the same way your mother would have reacted to your behavior? Yes. No further questions. Thank you.
Did they bring up your education?
He tried to pan you on it. He tried to pin that on you based off the mother's reaction. Because they think that's typical black affair.
Yeah, go ahead. What did you say, Brother Bag?
Was your education brought up into this?
No.
Did the lady that called the police on you know your background?
So here's the wild part. I was the president. You won't believe this. I was the president of the Parent Teacher Association at my daughter's school. And I volunteered at the school on a regular basis. However, they had just got a new principal for that school year. So she didn't know me personally.
The had no background on you. Personally. She didn't have any background on you.
She didn't have any background on me.
But somebody had to in that school.
So yes. So here's the issue. So the allegation that the principal made was that I choked my daughter. And so I know. So the associate superintendent, who's now the superintendent, was a black guy, and the dean of students was a black guy, and they was like, We were standing right next to you. We didn't see you choke your daughter. And she was just vehemently, yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So then when we went to trial, the nurse was like, I was standing right behind Mr. Lumumba. I didn't see him choke his daughter. The nurse said this, who was the prosecution's witness. So then the prosecutor was like, his daughter never complained of him grabbing her by the neck. All she complained about was he grabbed him on the forearm and said, let's go. So then
it sounds like your status probably led to her, calling, because they get a God complex whenever they have a strong black male, especially educated.
Negro, absolutely. She probably Negro, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Because I remember my lawyer was asking the principal, like, all of your colleagues have testified that they were standing right next to the defendant and he didn't choke his daughter. The child has even testified that her dad didn't choke her, but yet you're still claiming he choked his daughter. How do you explain it? So then I remember she was like, well, she was crying. So my lawyer went and got the pictures of my daughter that the police took and said, well, we can see right here that she isn't crying. My daughter gets on the stand and was like, I wasn't crying. I mean, it was unbelievable. But the expectation was, they didn't know who they was dealing with. The expectation was that I was just going to capitulate, I was going to be weak, and somehow I was going to take a plea of some kind. But Moore says, wow, you should have never had to go through any of that. So I knew part of the expectation was they were trying to get some type of reaction out of me. Because I remember when I was arrested, they had me in the car before they took me downtown. I was like, hurry up, take me downtown if I could bond out. And the principal went up to the police officer and said, so what do you know about this guy? And the cop was like, I don't know. I've never met him before. He doesn't have a record. Why? And so then we use that, like, so why are you assuming that this man is a common criminal? You've never met him before. So we was able to show that the principal basically had just stereotyped me as some type of criminal. Even though it was unbelievable. It was wild, man. Wild. Like, wow.
That's crazy, bro.
Like I said, I went to trial in February of 2018. It was 1 week before I had an interview to get into my PhD program.
Well, thank God you were able to get that dropped and you were exonerated.
I was nervous because I'm like, man, they're not going to believe me over this white woman. I remember telling myself this, like, man, they're not going to believe me over this white woman. But this is what happens. I tell anyone you go to trial, and OJ even set the precedent for this. It comes down to the jury. You got to pick a jury that will be sympathetic to you. So I made sure everyone on my jury was 45 and up, because everyone on the jury who's older believed in corporal punishment.
Right.
So
yes,
it was like, I was cool. Like, so then I remember the prosecutor was like, well, the principal told you to not take your daughter and leave. So why didn't you do what she said? I said, the principal doesn't have authority over me. The principal's authority as the principal of the school doesn't supersede my authority as the parent. I said, it's that simple. She can't tell me what to do with my child. So, and I remember when the prosecutor was giving his elocution, he was like, well, don't believe him just because he's wearing a suit, and was able to use some fancy words. That's literally what he said when he was giving his summation. Like, I was like, what the fuck? And I remember like they was trying to use all these negative adjectives to characterize me. And every time they did, I would just take a drink of water. They say something crazy, I just take a drink of water. Because the whole goal for them was to try to get a visceral reaction out of me so that I can look like I lack self-control. And I'm like, well, he can't control himself in the courtroom. He must have done what they said he did. So I always tell young brothers, the power of self-control.
That's important.
The power of self-control.
All day, every day.
When everything happened and she called the police, I just sat there. I didn't leave her. I just sat there.
Because this was going to play out wrong. You knew that.
Yeah, so I was like, nah. Because then what would happen is, okay, I know I'm innocent. I was livid. I could have punched through a brick wall. That's how mad I was, right? But I knew if I reacted in any type of manner, that would have made me look guilty. They told you to arrest while you're resisting. And here's the other issue, because you got to think logically. Shout out to my big sis. If you resist to arrest, that's another charge. So now your bond is going to be even higher. So it's going to cost you more money to get you out.
Yeah.
Right? So I was like, nah. And so what I did, I called my uncle. He came and bonded me out. He got me out of jail. We went straight to the ATM. I gave him his money back, and I was at work the next morning. Like nothing happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
These people have no problem messing up your life. And
no problem. And so here's the other issue. So in Dayton, because we're from Dayton, Ohio, shout out to the Gem City, West Dayton Strong. And if you're watching, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. But what ended up happening was the foreman on the jury actually went to the school and told the principal in a meeting, you almost ruined this man's life and removed this man from his child's life. He then actually wrote an article on his experience in the case in the Dayton Weekly News, which is the African-American newspaper in Dayton. So yeah, like it was wild, man, like wow. But I knew how to comport myself. How old was I? I was early 30s. So I knew how to comport myself. And I said, I'm not going to fall for the Jedi mind trick, the banana in the tailpipe. You're trying to get a reaction out of me. You're purposely trying to undermine my authority. So when I get upset, you can say, oh my God, I'm scared. I said, I'm not falling for that dumb shit. But what we did do was we sued the school and we sued the principal.
You should have. I mean, it makes no sense when a person with your background, I mean, come on, let's be realistic. How many brothers have your credentials would do something like that?
Right.
I mean, that should have been a red flag right there.
It's not a lot of
and it wasn't. They were power tripping and they wanted to reduce this man, and at all costs. If it would have cost you your job, your daughter, they wouldn't have lost any sleep. And that's sad.
And this is the other issue. Because like I said, I volunteered at school all the time. So I remember there was a time where I had my son, who's 3 years older than my daughter, and we were there waiting to pick her up. And what ended up happening was some child got in trouble, and the mother came in the main office and smacked her son in front of everybody. Bow! And I was like, I joked like, damn, I thought I was 8 years old for a second. Like, oh man, you know. And so everybody started laughing. And the secretaries was like, that's right, girl. You got to let them know who's boss. Right? So I said, hold on. So when the black woman uses corporal punishment in the school, she's high-fived. But when the black man, the father, exercises his authority over his child, called a popo. I said, this is what they call black misandry. This is what they call what? Discrimination, sexism. You see what I'm saying? So I was like, yeah, I remember and even my lawyers, who were 2 white women, they said to me, this would have happened to you if you was a white man.
Yeah, but you have 3 things going against you. 1, educated, black, and you're buffed. I mean, you kind of hit the trifecta there. You know, I mean, a white person.
I've been told that before. I mean, I've had situations like I work in higher ed to where I could tell, like I walk in. I mean, I work out all the time. Like today was back day for me, and I got it in. I mean, it's just what I do. You know what I'm saying? This body by Lumumba suit on Batman type shit. You know what I'm saying? But I could tell sometimes that people feel uncomfortable. Like I'm like that, but I'm like that's not my problem. You know what I mean? But and Dante, you work out. You know, you do the
body build. Yeah,
you could tell. You could be as well mannered and personable the whole line. And people, oh my God, like what the fuck is wrong with you?
I get that now. I work at Miami University now, and I get that same thing. And I work in an all-white culture. And it's funny because I'm the black man walking on the campus, and they looking at me like, do he belong here?
Yeah. The reason why they know that if they say something, their life is in danger physically, and that's what they're intimidated by.
They have that belief. So yeah, it's wild. But I actually went through that, and I even do a workshop on how to combat the criminal justice system, right? So one of the things I tell people is something my dad always told me. One is that the best way to deal with the criminal justice system is don't get involved in it. But I say 2, and I tell people this, and my uncle told me this, is the only way you catch a fish is if the fish does what?
Catch the bait. Take the bait. Opens
his mouth.
Well, that's true too.
Mm-hmm. So what we tell people, shut up. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? An arrest doesn't mean you're guilty. I remember I had a defense attorney tell me, the only time you tell your story is on the witness stand. One time and one time only is on the witness stand. That's it. That's it. And then the rest of the time, they got to do their job. Earn your paycheck, B. Earn your paycheck.
Right.
right? And I'm not advocating people going out here and being miscreants, but we have to understand that, like, so for example, we know back in the day, maybe when our parents were children, they said maybe 1 in 7 black men were going to be involved in the carceral state at one point. Then when we came of age, I think it was 1 in 5. Now it's 1 in 3. Right? It used to be 1 in 5, then became 1 in 4, and became 1 in 3. So at this point, that means even it ain't just Pookies and Ray Rays, even good brothers are getting locked up. So what does that mean? That means that this issue is systemic.
Didn't they change the school system for that now? Now it's what is that new process they have now? So if you don't pass a certain grade, they already are building a cell for you?
Yes, they argue that based on 3rd grade reading scores, right? 3rd grade reading scores, based on 3rd grade reading scores, what would happen is if you don't pass that 3rd grade reading test, the prison industrial complex is already, they basically have booked the bed. Because there's a correlation between literacy and what? Criminality. And unfortunately, I know, and you be in it like, this dude is dumb as a bag of rocks. He can't even formulate a coherent sentence. Like literally. So there is a correlation between what? Because if you can't read and write, there's no way you're going to be able to work a legitimate job. Right? And so, I mean, you've probably seen this before to where you're going somewhere to fill out an application and the brother got his girl there filling out the application form because he can't read and write. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole other conversation about why are you with a man who can't read and write? What type of low self-esteem do you have? Right? But like, it's a real issue. But part of it, like Brother Bag said, due to the fact that I was educated, I was credentialed, I was well-read and well-spoken, I knew, I said, man, you ain't about to get, because I remember they kept trying to offer me a plea deal. I got charged with 3 crimes: domestic violence, child endangerment, and assault. So one thing about the criminal justice system, they overcharge you to try to get you to plead.
Get you to take one of them. Yep.
They throw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and hold something stick. So I was like, listen, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, right? And so they had like 5, 6 pre-trials. I kept telling them, look, I ain't taking no deal. So the day of the trial, they dismissed one of the charges. We show up and like, hey, we dismissed one of the charges. So now I'm facing 2 charges. And what ends up happening is they're like, well,
what were those 2 charges?
So the 2 charges I was facing then was assault and child endangerment, right? So they dropped the domestic violence. So then, the prosecutor has the power to charge you with whatever they want, right?
Yeah,
right.
So
that domestic violence is only M1. The other 2 are F5s.
Right. So
yeah, but the domestic violence gets you, you lose your gun rights.
Right.
That was
another thing. I didn't want to
lose
rights. And domestic violence is enhanceable. So once you've been convicted of one domestic violence, the next time you charge with it, it'll be a felony.
Felony 5. Yep.
Right. Yeah, it's enhanceable. So what ends up happening is then they're like, okay, well, we'll drop all the charges if you plead to a misdemeanor to 3rd degree, which is negligent assault. I said, no, we're going to trial. No. So it was a 2-day trial. As a matter of fact, I remember February 9th and 10th. I even had the transcripts from the trial. Because I had to use this to sue the school. You know what I mean? Had the transcript trial. And of course I was found. The jury deliberated 5 minutes, man. 5 minutes. But I remember standing up and they're like, okay, and the foreman reads the verdict, and I remember my heart was pumping. I wasn't afraid of going to jail. I could hold my own, I ain't no issue. But I knew that if I go to jail, everything, my whole career is over with. It's over.
Right.
Right? I knew that. So that was my issue. And I knew, as you said, Dante, is that if I go to jail, that child support ticker don't stop ticking.
No, it don't. And they're going to take your money in jail when you go to prison. I had $10 a month. I went to prison and they only give you enough money just to buy personals.
But absolutely.
They only give you money to buy personals. And I remember I went in with a $7,200 check and I ended up with $15 of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they take it all. So, it's very,
Ramon, I want to ask you a quick question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, and kind of going back to the conversation you spoke on earlier about prison and them building prisons based off of reading scores. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a correlation?
Well, yeah, so that's why there's a thing called the school to prison pipeline. Yeah. If you ever get a chance, check out Dr. Jawanza Kunjuku. Go online, YouTube, check out Dr. Jawanza Kunjuku. He wrote a book entitled Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. I'm getting a little background, so you might have to mute yourself. But one of the things that he argues is that it's a conspiracy to destroy black boys, not black men. Because if you get them when they are a boy, they will never become a man. Right? And so if you go on YouTube and check him out, and he came out with this in the 80s, but it will blow your mind. He looks at all of the factors and variables that go into what? Countering to the conspiracy to destroy black boys. And another thing that he talks about is this whole idea of the schools being part of the conspiracy. So people say, how can you say the schools are in on destroying black boys? And he breaks it down. He says, when you go to a school that had these huge pep rallies, right? They have these huge pep rallies, and if you win a baseball game, football game, basketball game, you get these huge trophies, right? He says, however, you make the honor roll, you make high honor roll, you make the dean's list, you get these tiny little certificates. He says, even the schools are in on promoting athletics over academics.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's amazing. It's crazy. And I read his books, but right when my son was born, I read his book so that I could be cognizant of these issues. And one of the things that they do with black boys is they always try to label them as having a learning disability and trying to put them on some type of medication.
I had to deal with that. And it's funny because they practice on your child with that. I remember Q, my son, they put him out in 4th grade, and we had to homeschool him. All the Dayton public schools expelled him, and it wasn't his behavior. It was the medicines that they were putting him on that changed him. And so right around 9th grade, we put him back, and I took him off. Dr. Alonzo Patterson, one of the doctors in Prime Health, stated that he didn't believe in it, and that you just got to discipline the child and deal with your child on an educational basis. And he said it's just you wing them off and give them very, very low doses. So he got him to the point where he did. Thank God for the pandemic, because during the pandemic, he didn't have to go to school. So we took him off his 10th grade year, period. Mm-hmm. We just said, forget it. Honor roll student, didn't have any issues in school anymore. No phone calls. He's a normal kid. He's in college right now, and he's doing big things. And he hasn't been on medicine going on some years now. So I agree with the fact that you don't have to medicate a kid. Just because a kid has a vivid imagination, they interpret that as, oh, he has ADHD or he's hyperactive and stuff like that. And he's not.
And another thing, if I could interject, is that one of the things Dr. Joanne Conjufi talks about is that boys tend to be more rambunctious than girls. Mm-hmm. So he says part of it is the methodological approach in the education, that there isn't more gross fine motor skills that are being incorporated into, of course, K through 6, rather than sit down, read, be quiet, which is geared more towards how young ladies tend to be weird and educated. So I mean, he really goes deep into it, man. Really goes deep into it. He came out in the 80s, bro. But his workshop on countering the conspiracy to destroy black boys is a godsend. And what happens is when you watch it, you like, man, these are things I witnessed and saw when I was growing up in school.
I would have to, if I was gonna ever have a kid, which I wouldn't, but I would not want them in public schools. I would prefer to have them homeschooled. You can't trust these teachers.
You can't. Unless it's an independent black school. So I do know there are some great independent black schools like the Lotus Academy in Philadelphia, right? There are some great independent black schools, but unfortunately they are few and far between.
And they probably cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, that I don't know, but you're right, they probably do.
I think there's babies teaching babies is what the principle is now, because half of them you get these fresh out teachers that they're only doing it just to get the credit and free education, so they don't have to pay nothing. Not the necessary point of I want to teach kids. I'm starting to notice that in a lot of the schools today, that they don't have the mindset of want to teach them. It's just, I ain't got to pay the school back. So if I can get 3 years out of this, then they're going to forgive me. And then I can go up and do more and get this teacher salary where I ain't got to work half of the year. And I think it's unfair, but that's what you get. You get one or a few teachers out the bunch that really care, but at this point, their voices are muffled.
Right. Yeah, so it's tough, but yeah.
You have a lot of them sleeping with the kids now.
This is very true, particularly when you get to middle school and high school. Now, I will say this. What we do know is that when you talk about that, it tends to be white women who are sleeping with the male students more than any other racial, gender, demographic group.
It is.
Yeah.
All right, fellas, I'm about to call it a night.
They stroking them too. They stroking them. They getting 20, 30 years, man.
The one white lady got what 27 years just recently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, fellas, I'm about to call it a night, man. It was good talking with y'all.
No doubt, no doubt. Hey, so listen, I'm about to sign off as well. This is a great conversation. We'll probably tap back in Friday, probably Friday. But we'll do one where we'll kind of extrapolate on child support. We'll even talk about Dr. Joanza Kunjufu's his book, groundbreaking book, Countless Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, so on and so forth. But y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Appreciate you all being with us for over 3 hours tonight. We're going to always hold it down. Make sure you bet on Black. Until next time, peace.
Peace.